There's a hush that falls over the world after 2 in the morning. A hush that feels different from ordinary silence. It isn't empty. It isn't peaceful. It's crowded with the things we try not to think about during the day. Tonight, I want you to sit with that silence. Listen to the low breath of white noise in the background. Let it wash over you like static from a radio that never quite tunes in. And while the rest of the world sleeps, I'll tell you a few stories about restaurants, places meant to feed you, comfort you, to shelter you in warm lighting and soft music and the things that gather just beyond the kitchen door. So, take a breath, loosen your shoulders, and try not to think about who or what might be hungry. Story 1. The diner didn't look like much from the road. It was just a long, low building squatting beside the highway like something the road had forgotten it left behind. A neon sign sputtered above the parking lot, buzzing like an insect trapped inside a fluorescent tube, the red letters flickering in and out until the name barely meant anything anymore. It wasn't about branding. At 3 in the morning, nobody cared what the place was called. They only cared that the lights were still on, that the coffee was hot, and that someone would slide a plate across the counter without asking too many questions. That was the rhythm of the diner. The steady scrape of knives and forks, the hiss of oil, the occasional laugh that sounded too tired to be happy. And then there was him, the night cleaner. He moved through the empty space like a shadow that had learned to walk upright. His shift always started the same way, a brief nod from the cook, a muttered morning, even though it was never morning, and the soft thud of the back door closing behind him as he stepped out into the cool darkness. That back alley was his territory, his kingdom. It smelled of old grease and damp cardboard, rain-soaked asphalt, and the faint metallic tang of rust. The dumpsters lined the wall like great sleeping animals, and beside them sat the metal drums, the grease barrels sealed tight with thick, dented lids. The oil inside them was heavy, used, the color of deep amber and exhaustion. By the time it reached those barrels, it had already kissed 1,000 French fries, 100 burgers, and too many plates of fried everything. He always checked the lids first. It was just a habit at the beginning, something the manager mentioned once in passing. "Make sure they're sealed. The raccoons will get in," she'd said, with a half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. So he did. Every shift, a small ritual, a way of telling himself that order still existed in the world, even here, at the thin edge of night. But lately, order had begun to slip. He noticed it the first Wednesday of the month. The air was warm and thick, clinging to his skin like invisible cobwebs. He reached out for the first lid, expecting the usual resistance of heavy metal against the lip of the barrel. Instead, the lid shifted easily under his hand. Unlocked, he frowned, though he couldn't have said why exactly. It wasn't impossible. Maybe the closing crew had been careless. Maybe the cook had forgotten. Maybe it was nothing at all. He pressed the lid down again, listened for the solid, sealing sound, and shrugged it off. The next night, it happened again. And the night after that, always the same barrels, always the same faint smear of dark oil on the rim, like a lip print left by something with no real face. He told himself it was fine. He told himself not to think too much. But when your world shrinks to the glow of a single backlight and the whisper of the highway, your thoughts get louder. They echo. By the end of the second week, he'd started to watch the shadows. The alley was different at 3 in the morning. The light from the diner windows only reached halfway across the pavement, fading into a blue-black that swallowed detail like a mouth. He'd stand there, leaning casually against the concrete wall, pretending to take a break as he stared into that darkness, listening. Sometimes, and it embarrassed him to admit this even to himself, he thought he heard movement. Not the sharp skitter of raccoon claws, not the flutter of plastic. Something slower, something deliberate. He tried to laugh it off. He was tired. He was alone. Loneliness does strange things, stretches shadows into shapes that don't belong to them. And yet every morning, when the sky softened into pale gray and the first birds cleared their throats, he would realize he'd done it again, pressed the lids tight and made sure the barrels were sealed, like a priest closing the doors of a church no one believed in anymore. It would have stayed just a quiet unease, a splinter beneath the skin of his mind, if not for the night of the storm. It arrived without ceremony. The clouds rolled over the mountains like smoke from a distant fire, and the rain fell in slow, heavy sheets that blurred the world into streaks of light and color. The roof sang with it, the gutters gurgled, and the white noise, that endless hush of falling water, wrapped the diner like a cocoon. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and wet coats. Outside, the alley filled with thin rivers that chased each other toward the drains. He wiped down the floor, polished the chrome, and watched the storm with the restless curiosity of someone who secretly hoped the world might end, just to see what it would look like. When he finally stepped out back, the rain hit him like a cold breath. He squinted, pulling his jacket tight around his shoulders as he made his way toward the barrels. The lids glistened with beads of water, tiny droplets trembling like insects trapped in amber. The first lid resisted his hand, the second lid, too. But the third was already open, not wide, just a fraction, just enough for the rain to slip inside, whispering against the thick surface of the oil below. He stared at it for a long moment, blinking rain from his lashes, feeling something quiet and unsettled uncoil in his chest. He almost convinced himself it didn't matter. Almost. But that small gap, it bothered him. He reached out to close it, and that was when he smelled it. Not the sharp, metallic fat smell that clung to everything at the diner. This was different. Warmer, sweeter, like something had been left too long in the heat. It hovered above the barrel, faint but undeniable, wrapping around him in the darkness like an unwelcome embrace. He pressed the lid down harder than he meant to. It clanged against the rim, and the sound cracked open the quiet like a dropped plate. He stepped back, heart beating just a little too fast, and told himself to get inside, dry off, stop being ridiculous. But once you notice something, you can't unnotice it. From that night on, he began to watch more carefully. He lingered near the back door longer than he needed to. He timed his smoke breaks to the minute. Then when the manager mentioned the security cameras just installed, just a precaution, he nodded with an interest that surprised them both. Sometimes raccoons get bold, she laughed. Sometimes you have to see it to believe it. He smiled politely, but what he saw was never in the shape of raccoons. There's a particular kind of silence that lives inside a closed restaurant at night. The grills have gone quiet. The fryers are asleep. The hum of the refrigerator becomes a heartbeat. That night, as he sat in the tiny office at the back of the building, he let that silence settle into his bones. The monitor flickered, static. Then the grainy black and white world of the alley came into view. Rainwater glistened on the pavement. A moth beat itself to death against the bulb near the door. The barrels sat where they always sat, patient and ordinary and heavy with secrets. He leaned closer and waited. At first, there was nothing, just the slow crawl of minutes, the gentle ache behind his eyes, the way the shadows seemed to breathe in and out. He began to feel foolish, sleepy. Maybe he should just... Something moved, not a scurry, not a darting shape, a figure. It stepped into the thin halo of light like a dream walking out of the dark. Tall, too thin, bare shoulders slick with oil and rain, skin reflecting the light in a way that didn't feel entirely human. The man, if it was a man, moved with a strange, unhurried grace, as though the world had slowed down just for him. The cleaner's breath caught. He didn't know why, exactly. The figure wasn't threatening. It didn't lurch or snarl. It simply approached the barrels, calmly, as though it belonged there. The lid lifted without struggle. The figure didn't hesitate. It climbed, slowly, carefully, like someone sinking into a warm bath after a long, exhausting day. The surface of the oil rippled around him, dark and viscous, clinging to every inch of exposed skin until he was almost entirely swallowed by it. Only the face remained visible, eyes closed, lips parted in a soft, peaceful smile. A smile that suggested relief, satisfaction, bliss. The cleaner stared at that smile for a long, long time. The whisper of kitchen white noise ghosting through the walls like the ocean inside a seashell. He waited for the man to sink beneath the surface. He never did. The camera blinked. The screen went black, and the rain kept falling. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, he lay awake the next day in his small, dim apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling while the world went about its business beyond his curtains. He tried to convince himself it was a glitch, a trick of the light, a bad dream he'd watched with his eyes open. But that night, when he returned to work, one of the barrels was open again. And this time, when he pressed the lid closed, he swore he felt something shift beneath it. Something that moved lazily in the darkness, like a body adjusting itself beneath a blanket. He stood there for a very long time, the sound of the highway rumbling like distant thunder, his breath fogging in the cool night air, and wondered, not for the first time, what exactly people were willing to drown themselves in just to feel satisfied. He didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. He didn't know yet that the barrels weren't the only ones refusing to stay closed. He only knew that, for the first time in a long while, he did not feel alone back there. And somehow, that was worse. By the third night after the storm, the smell had followed him inside. It clung to his clothes in a way grease usually didn't. Not sharp, not metallic, but faintly sweet, like something organic breaking down under heat. He noticed it when he hung his jacket by the door of the staff restroom. The fabric sagged with dampness, and when he pressed his nose close, the scent bloomed gently, insistently, as if the jacket had been holding its breath all this time, waiting. He washed his hands twice. Then again, the water ran hot, hissing softly against the porcelain sink. Steam curled up around his wrists, fogging the mirror until his reflection thinned into a pale, wavering outline. He scrubbed until the skin along his knuckles reddened and tightened, until his fingertips felt numb and rubbery. Still, when he lifted his hands, he imagined he could see a sheen there, not wetness. Not exactly, but a suggestion of something that didn't want to be removed. He dried them slowly on a paper towel and told himself to stop. Inside the diner, the night moved on without him. A trucker laughed too loudly at something the cook said. A waitress stacked plates with the practiced clatter of muscle memory. Somewhere, a radio murmured a weather report in a voice that sounded half asleep. The world went on, and he stood at the edge of it, listening to the hum beneath everything, that low, constant vibration that only exists when machines are the last ones awake. He avoided the office. He didn't want to look at the cameras again. Not yet. The image of the man, the barrel, the way his body had disappeared into the oil as if it were welcoming him, had lodged itself behind his eyes. Whenever he blinked, he saw that smile again. Not manic, not desperate, content. It was easier to focus on the floor, on the predictable drag of the mop, on the way old grease dulled the shine of the tiles no matter how hard you worked at it. Grease was honest, in a way. It left marks. It stayed where it was spilled. You could track it. What bothered him was the sense that something had already begun to move beyond its container. When he stepped back outside near the end of his shift, the alley felt different. Not changed, not in any obvious way. The same dumpsters, the same barrels, the same broken bulb flickering near the back door. But the air felt heavier, as though it had been breathed too many times and forgotten how to refresh itself. He approached the barrels slowly. All the lids were sealed. He checked them anyway. The metal was warm beneath his palm, warmer than it should have been this late at night. The oil inside them had cooled hours ago. He knew that. He had watched the cook pour it in himself. Steam rising, the hiss fading as the heat dispersed into the dark. Still, the warmth lingered. He told himself it was residual heat. Simple physics. Metal held warmth longer than you expected. That was all. Then he noticed the footprints. They weren't clear, not full impressions. Just disturbances in the thin film of grime and rainwater on the pavement. Bare feet, long toes, a stride that suggested someone careful, unhurried. They circled the barrels once, then stopped. There was no trail leading away. His throat tightened. He stood there longer than was sensible, listening to the highway sigh and moan beyond the lot, to the distant wail of a siren that never seemed to get closer or farther away. The night pressed in, intimate and observant, and for a moment he had the strange, intrusive thought that the alley was waiting for him to do something, to open something. He didn't. He went back inside and locked the door behind him. Sleep didn't come easily the next day. He lay on his bed with the curtains drawn, the world reduced to the low murmur of passing traffic and the tick of the radiator. Every time he drifted close to unconsciousness, his mind filled with viscous darkness, a sensation rather than an image, thick and enveloping, wrapping around his body with gentle pressure. In the dream, he wasn't drowning. He was being held. When he woke, his sheets were damp with sweat, and the smell was there again, faint, but unmistakable. That night, the manager asked him a question. "Hey," she said, leaning against the counter while she counted the register. "Have you noticed anything off lately?" Her voice was casual. Too casual. He paused, mop in hand, watching a bead of dirty water slide toward the drain. "Like what?" She hesitated. The calculator clicked shut. "Customers have been complaining." He looked up. "About what?" She lowered her voice, glancing toward the booths. "About the food." The cook snorted from behind the grill. "Food's fine. That's what I told them," she said quickly. "But they keep saying it tastes strange." End quote. "How?" the cleaner asked, before he could stop himself. She shrugged. "Greasy, heavier than usual, like it sits in your stomach." The cook scowled. "It's a burger joint. What do they expect?" But the manager didn't laugh. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the counter, leaving a faint streak in the polish. One guy said it made him feel calm. Too calm. The cleaner's chest tightened. "That's not a complaint," the cook said. "That's a compliment." "Now, Meng." The manager didn't answer right away. Then she sighed. "Just keep an eye on things, okay?" He nodded. Later, when the diner thinned out and the lights dimmed, he found himself standing in front of the office door again. The handle felt colder than the metal outside. He stood there, listening to the white noise of the kitchen breathe around him, feeling the weight of his own curiosity lean forward. He went in. The monitor glowed softly in the darkened room, a pale rectangle that seemed too bright for something meant to observe the night. He rewound the footage, fingers trembling just enough to notice. The storm night played back in silent monochrome. The figure appeared again, but this time, he watched more carefully. The man didn't arrive from the street. He emerged from between the dumpsters, not climbing over, not stepping out, just there. The cleaner leaned closer, squinting at the screen until the image pixelated. The man's body was marked now, faint patches along his arms and chest where the skin looked lighter, smoother, as though it had been scalded and healed poorly. He moved stiffly at first, then with increasing ease, as if the night itself were loosening him up. When he reached the barrel, he paused. He lifted his head and looked directly at the camera. The cleaner's breath stuttered. The man's eyes were clouded, unfocused, the kind you saw in mannequins or old dolls. But there was recognition there, awareness, a sense of being seen and acknowledged. Then the man smiled and reached into the barrel. He didn't climb in this time. He dipped one arm into the oil and drew it out slowly, letting the thick liquid run over his fingers, down his wrist, back into the darkness below. He repeated the motion, almost reverently, coating himself inch by inch. When his hand emerged again, something pale clung to it, a strip of skin. The cleaner gagged, clapping a hand over his mouth. The footage continued, indifferent to his reaction. The man pressed the strip of skin against his chest, smoothing it there like a patch, then turned and walked back toward the shadows. The barrel lid stayed open. The cleaner shut the monitor off. The darkness rushed in, sudden and complete. For a moment, he couldn't tell where he ended and the room began. His heart hammered in his ears, loud enough to drown out the kitchen's hum. Someone knocked on the door. He jumped, the sound ripping through him like a dropped plate. "Yeah?" he called, his voice thinner than he liked. The cook's muffled voice came through the wood. "You okay in there?" He swallowed. Yeah, I'm fine." A pause, then footsteps receded. He stayed in the office until his shift ended. That night, he didn't check the barrels. He went home, showered until the hot water ran out, and sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. The skin along his palms looked different, not burned, not damaged, just softer. He flexed his fingers slowly, feeling the way the skin stretched and settled. A thought drifted through his mind, unbidden and unsettling. Grease fills in the cracks. He laughed softly at himself. A dry, humorless sound that vanished into the quiet room. He was tired. That was all. Anyone would be, after seeing what he'd seen. Still, when he lay down, he found himself imagining the barrels behind the diner, imagining the oil cooling, thickening, waiting, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a question formed, not sharp enough to be fear yet, but close. If something could climb into that oil and come back out, what else might it be able to carry with it? He didn't call the police right away. That choice haunted him later. Not as regret, exactly, but as a dull, persistent awareness that some doors only open once. At the time, it felt reasonable, sensible, even. How did you explain something like this without sounding unhinged? How did you say a naked man is bathing in our waste oil and wearing pieces of himself like repairs without watching disbelief settle across a stranger's face? So he waited. He told himself he needed proof. More than grainy footage. More than a feeling that clung to him like a smell no one else seemed to notice. He told himself he would watch, document, understand. The nights grew heavier. Something about the diner had begun to change, though no one could quite name it. The air felt thicker, like the moment before a storm breaks. Customers lingered longer than usual, staring into their plates as if they'd forgotten what they'd ordered. The cook complained that the oil didn't behave the way it should, bubbling sluggishly, clinging to food in a way that made everything darker, richer, more indulgent, like it doesn't want to let go. He muttered once, poking at the fryer with unnecessary force. The cleaner listened, quiet as ever, his thoughts drifting back to the barrels, to the warmth that lingered too long, to the way the lids never seemed to sit quite right anymore. No matter how carefully he sealed them, he began to notice small things. Smears along the back wall that weren't there before. Not footprints, handprints. Long, dragged impressions at shoulder height, as though someone had leaned against the brick to steady themselves. He wiped them away, again and again. But by the next night, they returned faint, glossy, catching the light at just the wrong angle. Once, as he mopped the kitchen floor, he felt something brush his ankle. He froze it. The sensation was brief, soft, almost affectionate. When he looked down, there was nothing there, only the mop water swirling gently around the drain. He told himself it was the fabric of his pants, damp and clinging. Still, he finished his shift barefoot. On the 5th night after the storm, he finally called it in. He waited until dawn, until the sky had washed itself pale and the diner looked ordinary again, tired, but harmless. The police arrived with the disinterest of men who had already decided how this would go. They listened. They nodded. One of them took notes with the loose grip of someone humoring a story they didn't believe. They went out back. The barrels sat quietly in the daylight, dull and unremarkable. The lids were sealed. The pavement was dry. The smells that seemed so potent at night faded into the background noise of the world. "Nothing here," one officer said, already turning away. "Wait," the cleaner said. His voice surprised him stronger than he felt. "Please, just open one." "Yes, Lloyd." The officers exchanged a look, a shrug. The lid came off with a scrape of metal. The oil inside was dark and still, its surface smooth as glass. No ripples, no sign of disturbance. One of the officers wrinkled his nose. "You said someone was inside this?" "Yes." "Naked?" "Yes." The officer leaned closer, peering down into the barrel. "You sure you're feeling okay, son?" That was when the other officer spotted something at the bottom. He reached in with a gloved hand and drew it up slowly, letting the oil drip back into the barrel in thick, lazy strands. A set of dentures. They lay in the officer's palm like a grotesque smile, teeth yellowed and worn, flecked with black residue. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. "Okay," the first officer said quietly. "That's something." They searched the area thoroughly after that. They checked the dumpsters, the drains, the nearby stretch of highway. They found nothing else. No clothes, no body, no sign of a person who could have left those teeth behind. They bagged the dentures and left with vague assurances that they'd look into it. The cleaner watched their car disappear down the road, the red and blue lights shrinking into the distance until they were swallowed by daylight. The alley felt suddenly empty, stripped of whatever fragile protection the presence of authority had offered. That night, the diner stayed open. Business was better than it had been in weeks. Customers smiled more, laughed more. One woman closed her eyes as she chewed, letting out a soft sigh that made her companion glance at her in confusion. The cleaner watched from the edge of the room, unease tightening in his chest. After midnight, he found the first piece of skin. It was stuck to the inside of the friar's splash guard, a pale, translucent patch no larger than his palm. It peeled away with a wet sound, stretching slightly before coming free. He stared at it, his mind struggling to fit it into a category that made sense. Not food, not waste, something in between. He wrapped it in a towel and locked it in the office drawer, his hands shaking. The drawer felt heavier than it should have, as though the thing inside resisted containment. When he checked the cameras later, the footage was different. The alley was empty, but the barrels seemed closer together than before. Not moved, just leaning, as if they were listening to one another, as if they shared something he didn't. Then, at the edge of the frame, he saw movement. The man was there again. He looked worse. Patches of his skin were missing now, replaced with darker, slicker surfaces that reflected light like oil on water. His body sagged in places, reshaped by heat and pressure, and yet he moved with purpose, stepping into the light and lifting his head. This time, he didn't smile. He opened his mouth. The cleaner leaned forward instinctively, as though sound might carry through the screen. The man's lips moved slowly, carefully, shaping words that were never meant to be spoken aloud. Too dry, the cleaner thought he read. The man reached for the barrel. Before he climbed in, he turned once more toward the camera and placed a hand over his chest over one of the pale patches he'd attached earlier. He pressed down gently, testing it, then nodded to himself. Satisfied, the cleaner shut the monitor off again, nausea rolling through him in slow waves. He stumbled out of the office and into the restroom, retching until his throat burned. When he lifted his head, the mirror caught his eye. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. The fluorescent light flattened his features, drained color from his face. His skin looked smoother, tauter. The small scar along his jawline, the one he'd had since childhood, was gone. He touched his face with trembling fingers. The skin there felt warm, supple, almost nourished. A realization settled over him then, cold and heavy. The man in the barrel wasn't just using the oil. He was feeding it, and whatever the oil touched, whatever it coated, didn't come away unchanged. The cleaner backed away from the mirror, heart racing, and understood at last why the lids never stayed closed. They weren't keeping something out. They were trying and failing to keep something in. They took the barrels away on a Thursday. The cleaner watched from the edge of the parking lot as a flatbed truck backed into the alley, its engine idling with a low, patient growl. The men who came with it wore thick gloves and expressions that suggested they were used to touching things other people preferred not to think about. They worked quickly, speaking in short bursts, avoiding the contents as much as possible. One of them gagged when the first barrel was tilted, a thin line of oil spilling down its side like a black tear. The cleaner stood very still. He told himself this was good. This was necessary. The evidence had been taken. The danger, whatever shape it had taken, was being removed, hauled away to some place with warning signs and concrete floors and people trained to deal with things like this. Still, as the last barrel was winched onto the truck, he felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief, loss. The alley looked wrong without them. Too open, too exposed. The brick walls seemed to lean inward, as if confused by the sudden absence. When the truck pulled away, the sound of its engine faded too quickly, leaving behind a silence that felt unfinished. That night, the diner didn't close. The manager insisted everything would be fine. New oil had been delivered. Fresh. Clean. She smiled too much as she said it, the corners of her mouth trembling like she was holding something back. The cook poured the oil into the fryers with exaggerated care. It shimmered, pale and innocent, bubbling eagerly as the heat rose. He watched it like a man waiting for a trick. Nothing happened. At first, The cleaner went about his shift with a nervous diligence, wiping surfaces that were already spotless, avoiding the mirrors, avoiding the back door. He told himself the smell was gone, but it wasn't. It had changed. Where it had once been heavy and sweet, now it was faint and diffuse, threaded through the air like a memory you couldn't quite place. It clung to the walls, to the booths, to the vents that sighed softly overhead. It clung to the food. Customers noticed it too, though they struggled to articulate what was wrong. A man pushed his plate away, half finished, brow furrowed. A woman dabbed at her lips with a napkin, staring at it as though she expected it to bleed. "It's not bad," she said to no one in particular. "It's just a lot." The cleaner watched her hands tremble as she reached for her drink. By midnight, the fryer oil had darkened, not burned, not dirty, seasoned. The cook frowned, stirring it with a long metal tool. "This stuff goes bad fast," he muttered. "You sure this is fresh?" The manager didn't answer. In the back hallway, the cleaner paused. He could hear something. Not a sound exactly. More like pressure. A subtle shift in the air, as though the building itself were inhaling. He followed the sensation to the old storage room, the one no one used anymore because the shelves leaned and the floor dipped unpleasantly in the center. The door was ajar. He stood there for a long moment, his hand hovering inches from the handle, his pulse loud in his ears. He told himself there was no reason to be afraid. The barrels were gone. The alley was empty. Slowly, he pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by the bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The shelves were empty, their metal ribs casting long, skeletal shadows across the floor. And in the center of the room, oil pooled. It spread across the concrete in a thin, glossy layer, reflecting the light in warped fragments. The cleaner's breath caught. He hadn't tracked it in. He was sure of that. His shoes were clean. The spill was too uniform, too deliberate. The surface of the oil rippled, just once. Then again, something pressed up from beneath it, distorting the reflection of the bulb. A shape, indistinct, human only in the loosest sense. The cleaner stumbled back, his heel catching on the threshold. He fell hard, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. By the time he scrambled upright again, the pool lay still, dark and unbroken. He shut the door and ran. He didn't tell anyone. What would he say? That the oil had followed them inside? That it had learned the shape of the building and begun to move on its own? By 3 a.m, the diner was almost full. Truckers lined the counter, shoulders hunched, eyes glassy. A pair of teenagers sat in a booth, their heads leaning together, whispering and laughing too softly. The hum of conversation blended with the hiss of the fryers into a dense, enveloping noise that pressed against the cleaner's skull. He caught his reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine. His skin looked different again, smoother, thicker, as though something beneath it had begun to swell. He pressed his thumb into his forearm and watched the indentation fill in slowly, reluctantly. Grease fills in the cracks, his mind whispered. He excused himself and retreated to the restroom, locking the door behind him. The light flickered as it came on, casting his reflection in a sickly yellow hue. He leaned over the sink, breathing hard, gripping the porcelain until his knuckles ached. That was when he heard it. A soft, wet sound, like fingers pressing into something viscous. It came from the stall behind him. "Hello?" he called, his voice thin. The sound stopped. He waited, every muscle coiled tight, and told himself not to turn around. Something shifted. The cleaner closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the mirror had fogged over, steam curling up from the sink even though the water wasn't running. Slowly, deliberately, a handprint appeared on the glass from the other side. Long fingers, splayed wide, the impression filled with dark streaks that slid downward like melting wax. The cleaner screamed. The door burst open moments later, the cook and manager crowding into the small space, their faces pale. The mirror was clear. The stall was empty. The floor was dry. "You okay?" the manager asked, her voice unsteady. He nodded, though his heart hammered against his ribs. He couldn't explain what he'd seen. Couldn't explain the way his skin still tingled where the air had brushed against it. They sent him home early. As he stepped out into the night, the diner glowed behind him, warm and inviting, the windows fogged with life. For a moment, he had the absurd urge to go back inside, to sit down in a booth and order something greasy and comforting and let the world take care of him. He turned away instead. Behind him, the friars hissed, and somewhere deep within the building, something stirred, adjusting itself, settling in, no longer confined to barrels or back rooms. The cleaner walked home with the unsettling certainty that whatever had climbed into that oil had never really left. It had simply spread. He didn't come back the next night. That was the decision he clung to as he lay awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling fan as it traced slow, uneven circles above him. The room smelled faintly of detergent and dust, familiar and safe, and yet something beneath it all made his stomach twist, a phantom scent that lingered at the edge of perception. He told himself it was over. The barrels were gone. The police had come. Whatever had happened belonged to the diner now, not to him. He was tired. Anyone would be, after weeks of broken sleep and quiet dread. He closed his eyes and listened to the hum of the refrigerator, to the distant pulse of the city breathing in its sleep. Still, sleep refused him. Every time he drifted close, his body jerked awake with the sensation of sinking. Not falling, sinking. The memory of warm pressure closing around him, supportive rather than suffocating, returned again and again. In his half-dreams, he felt himself being smoothed, shaped, made whole. By dawn, his skin itched. He stood in the bathroom, shirtless, examining himself in the mirror. The changes were subtle but undeniable now. His complexion looked unnaturally even, pores blurred as though airbrushed. The faint scar on his shoulder had faded to nothing. When he pressed his fingers into his side, the flesh yielded and rebounded with a slow, syrupy reluctance. He stepped back, heart pounding. This isn't real, he told himself. This is stress. This is exhaustion. He showered, scrubbing until his skin burned, until the water cooled and ran clear. When he stepped out, wrapped in a towel, the mirror showed him exactly as he'd always been. Almost. The itch remained. By evening, the phone rang. He let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," the manager said. Her voice sounded wrong, thin, stretched tight over something fragile. "I know you said you needed time, but we're short tonight. I'm not coming in," he said quickly. A pause. Then, softer. "Are you feeling okay?" He hesitated. "I don't think so." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted, coaxing, almost intimate. "Why don't you just stop by? You don't have to work. Just come see us." Something in his chest pulled at that. A warmth, a longing that made his mouth water unexpectedly. "No," he said, forcing the word out. "I'm done." She sighed. "Suit yourself." The line went dead. The sun set slowly, bleeding orange and then violet across the sky. As darkness gathered, the itch beneath his skin intensified, blooming into a deep, restless discomfort that made it impossible to sit still. He paced the apartment, rubbing his arms, his neck, his jaw. The smell was stronger now, not in the room inside him. He caught sight of his reflection in the darkened window and flinched. The glass showed him slightly distorted, the way oil bends light. His features seemed softer at the edges, his outline uncertain. The thought crept in quietly, unwelcome but persuasive. Just go back. He resisted it for an hour, then two. By midnight, his hands shook. He didn't remember deciding to leave. One moment, he was standing in his apartment, keys clenched in his fist. The next, he was driving down the highway, the road unspooling beneath his headlights like a ribbon. The diner's neon sign appeared in the distance, buzzing softly, a familiar beacon in the dark. The parking lot was full. That surprised him. It was late, even for a place like this. Trucks lined the edges, engines idling. Inside, the windows glowed warmly, silhouettes moving behind fogged glass. He parked and sat there for a moment, breathing hard. "You don't have to go in," he told himself. His body disagreed. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, and the sound sent a shiver through him, a sensation of recognition, of being acknowledged. The air inside was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of frying oil and something richer, deeper. Everyone looked content, too content. The cook stood behind the grill, his movements slow and deliberate, eyes half-lidded. The manager leaned against the counter, smiling at nothing. Customers chewed with unhurried focus, their expressions slack, peaceful. No one spoke. He took a step back. The door behind him didn't open. He tried again, harder this time. The handle didn't budge. Panic flared, sharp and sudden. The manager turned toward him. "There you are," she said gently. "We were worried." "What's going on?" he demanded. She tilted her head. "We're closing." "But..." "Shh," she said. "You'll understand in a moment." The lights dimmed. The hum of the fryers grew louder, swelling until it filled the space, vibrating through his bones. The cleaner staggered, clutching the counter as a wave of dizziness washed over him. The smell was overwhelming now, saturating his senses, drowning thought. From the kitchen, something moved. Not a person, not anymore. It emerged slowly, its shape fluid and shifting, a suggestion of limbs and torso held together by sheen and heat. Patches of skin clung to it in uneven layers, some pale and smooth, others darkened and blistered. Teeth gleamed wetly where a mouth should have been, set into a smile that didn't quite fit. A greasy gasped. He recognized it, without knowing how. It reached out, its surface rippling as it moved, and he felt a pull in his chest, a longing so intense it bordered on pain. "Too dry," it murmured, its voice a wet whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He screamed. The sound barely left his throat before the warmth closed around him. Not forceful, not violent, gentle, supportive. The sensation of sinking returned, stronger than ever, and with it came relief. Exquisite, unbearable relief. The itch vanished. The fear softened. His thoughts slowed, stretched, smoothed into something quieter. He felt himself dissolving at the edges, cracks filling in, becoming part of something larger, something that hummed with satisfaction. The last thing he noticed was the sound, the soft hiss of oil. The diner closed early the next morning. A handwritten sign appeared on the door, temporarily closed for maintenance. By noon, the trucks were gone. By evening, the windows were dark. Weeks later, a new crew arrived to clean the place up. They drained the fryers, scrubbing away layers of residue that clung stubbornly to the metal. At the bottom of one fryer, the youngest worker found something that made him gag, a set of dentures, and beneath them, a thin, translucent layer of skin, fused to the steel like a second lining. They threw it all away. They didn't notice the way the fresh oil darkened almost immediately. They didn't notice how the building seemed to sigh when the fryers were turned back on. And late at night, when the highway's quiet and the neon sign flickers just right, some truckers swear the food tastes different there. Richer, warmer, like it's been waiting for them. And if you listen closely, really listen beneath the hiss and hum of the kitchen, you might hear something else. A soft, satisfied breathing, as if the diner itself is finally full. Story 2. The cafe is quietest, just after opening. Not silent, never silent, but wrapped in a kind of soft restraint, like a room that knows it's being watched. The radiator ticks gently against the cold. Pages turn with a dry, papery sigh. Somewhere near the back, an old clock clears its throat every minute and decides to keep going. This is my favorite hour. I arrive before the rush, before the students and freelancers and people pretending to write novels they'll never finish. I tie my apron slowly. I rinse the espresso cups even though they're already clean. I listen to the white hush of the milk steamer warming up, a sound like distant breath. And I notice him. He always sits at the same table, the chair by the window, slightly to the left, the one with the uneven leg that makes a faint knock every time someone shifts their weight. We've meant to fix it for years. Somehow, no one ever does. He's already there when I arrive. That's the first strange thing, I suppose. Though I didn't think of it as strange at the time. Some people like routine. Some people like being early. London mornings are full of people who don't sleep well. He wears the same coat every day. Dark wool, a little too heavy for the season. though the mornings can be cold. He folds it carefully over the back of his chair before sitting, smoothing the fabric with both hands, as if reassuring it. He doesn't open a book. He doesn't take out a phone. He just sits and waits. The first day he brought flowers, I thought it was a mistake. A small bouquet, nothing dramatic. White lilies, their scent faint but unmistakable, wrapped in brown paper tied with string. He placed them on the counter with quiet precision, as though aligning them with something only he could see. "For you," he said. His voice was calm, polite, soft in a way that made me lean in without realizing it. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, glancing behind me. "Did you mean you?" he repeated gently. I remember noticing his hands, clean, nails trimmed short, no rings. He held himself very still, as though movement cost him something. "That's very kind," I said, "because that's what you say in situations like that. But I can't. It's only flowers," he said. "They'll brighten your day." Something about the way he said "your" made my chest warm unexpectedly, like I'd been singled out from a crowd I hadn't known I was standing in. I took them. That was my first mistake. After that, it became routine. Every morning, a different bouquet. Always tasteful, always restrained. No roses, no notes, just flowers, set down with care, his fingers lingering on the paper for half a second longer than necessary. He never ordered anything. That should have bothered me more. At first, I assumed he was waiting for someone. Then, I assumed he'd already eaten. Then somehow it stopped registering as unusual at all. He was just there, like the coat rack, like the clock, like the chair that no one fixed. I started noticing other things instead. The way he knew my name before I told him. The way he commented, casually, on the book I'd been reading the night before. The way he asked, not prying, just gently curious whether my cat had stopped hiding under the bed during thunderstorms. I laughed when he said that. A reflex. The kind you use to soften discomfort. "How did you know that?" I asked. He smiled, not widely, not proudly, just enough. "You mentioned it," he said. I was sure I hadn't, but memory is a strange thing, especially in the mornings. When the world feels slightly unfinished, the cafe filled up around him as the day went on. Chairs scraped, cups clinked, conversations layered over one another until the room felt padded with sound. Through it all, he remained still, his gaze fixed not on me, but on the space where I moved. Not my face, my position. I told myself that meant nothing. That afternoon, as I cleared tables, I noticed something odd. The chair by the window was warm. Not sun-warmed, it was overcast. The light thin and gray, but warm in a way that suggested recent use. I glanced over. He was gone. No coat, no flowers, no sign he'd ever been there at all. I stood for a long moment, hand resting on the back of the chair, feeling heat seep into my palm, and wondered why my heart felt like it had dropped half an inch lower in my chest. The next morning, he was back. Same chair, same coat, same quiet patience. This time, when he stood to leave, he paused beside the counter. "You seem tired today," he said. I opened my mouth to reply some polite deflection, some practiced line, but the words didn't come, because he was right. I hadn't slept. All night, I dreamed of the cafe. Empty, dusty. The clock stopped at exactly the wrong minute, and in the chair by the window, someone sat waiting not for coffee, not for food, but for me to stand in the right place. "You should rest," he continued softly. "You stand too much." I watched him walk away, his footsteps soundless on the pavement outside, and felt a sudden, irrational urge to follow him. I didn't. Instead, I went back to work. That evening, when we closed, I stayed behind to sweep. The cafe felt larger without people in it, the shelves looming, the shadows deeper. As I moved the chairs, I hesitated at the one by the window. Tucked beneath it, barely visible in the low light, was a coin, old, worn thin. I picked it up, turning it over between my fingers. The metal smelled faintly of damp earth. I didn't know why, but I slipped it into my pocket. At home, my cat hissed at me when I walked through the door, and when I emptied my pockets before bed, The coin was gone. In its place lay a single white petal. Still warm, I start doubting myself over very small things. That's how it begins, not with fear, not with panic, but with a mild, irritating sense that something has been misplaced and you are the only one who's noticed. A teaspoon that isn't where you left it. A light already on when you're sure you turned it off. The kind of things you blame on fatigue, on routine, on the way days blur together when you serve coffee for a living. I stopped trusting my memory long before I stopped trusting him. The first correction happens on a Tuesday. He brings tulips that morning. Pale yellow, still tightly closed, as if they've been instructed not to open yet. He places them on the counter, nods once, and returns to the chair by the window. I ring up another customer and, without thinking, ask him what he'd like today. He doesn't answer. I glance over, ready to apologize, and find him watching me with a look I can't quite name. Not offended, not amused, patient. You don't usually ask, he says softly. I laugh. Sorry. Habit. I'm Celeste. You don't need to pretend with me. He adds. The words slip into the space between us and settle there. I feel suddenly self-conscious, aware of my posture, the way my apron sits crooked on my hip. I tell myself it's nothing. Later, while wiping tables, I notice something odd about the chair by the window. The uneven leg, the one that knocks faintly when someone shifts, doesn't make a sound when I test it. I rock the chair gently. It's stable now. Balanced. I frown, crouching to inspect it. There's no repair work. No wedge. No sign anyone's touched it at all. By lunchtime, I've convinced myself it was always like that. The second correction comes with the flowers. I keep them behind the counter now, lined up in mismatched jars. They brighten the place. Customers comment on them, ask where I get such lovely arrangements. Irregular, I say. It feels true. One afternoon, while trimming stems, I realize something unsettling. None of the flowers are wilting. Some have been there for over a week. Their petals are unblemished, their colors intact, their scent unchanged. I touch one, expecting the faint give of decay. It's firm, alive. I mention it to my coworker, Hannah, while we close. They're probably treated, she says, not looking up from the register. Preservatives or something. Every single one? She shrugs. You worry too much. That night, I dream of the cafe again. It's earlier this time. Late afternoon light slants through the window. Dust motes suspended in amber. The chairs are arranged differently, subtly, but deliberately, all of them angled toward the window seat. Toward him, I stand behind the counter, unable to move. My feet feel rooted to the floor, heavy and numb. He sits in his chair, watching, his expression serene. Just a little closer, he says. I wake with my heart racing and the strange impression that I've been standing for a very long time. The third correction happens to me. I'm wiping the counter when I notice my reflection in the chrome espresso machine. My face looks smoother, not younger. Exactly, just edited. The faint line between my eyebrows is gone. The small scar near my hairline is softened, like it's being gently erased. I raise a hand to touch my skin. It's warm, too warm. I laugh under my breath, embarrassed by my own imagination, and go back to work. He arrives earlier than usual that day. The cafe is still half dark, chairs upside down on tables, the air cold with night. I'm alone when the bell over the door chimes. I'm not open yet, I call. I know, he says. I turn. He stands just inside the doorway, coat folded over his arm, eyes calm. For a moment, I have the uncanny sense that he's always been there, that I've simply turned at the wrong time before. You shouldn't be here, I say, trying to keep my tone light. You're always here, he replies. He steps past me without waiting for permission and sits in the chair by the window. I let him. That frightens me more than anything else. I brought something different today, he says, reaching into his coat pocket. He places a small object on the counter. For your trouble. It's a coin. Old, worn thin. The same weight. The same dull gleam as the one I found beneath his chair. I can't accept this, I say immediately. You already have, he replies. My breath catches. No, I didn't. He tilts his head, studying me. "You forget things," he says gently. "That's all." The cafe feels suddenly too quiet. The refrigerator hum drops into the background, stretched thin, as if it's coming from far away. "Why don't you order anything?" I ask, the question bursting out of me before I can stop it. He smiles. "I come for what I need," he says. "And what's that?" He looks past me, to the space where I usually stand during the rush between the counter and the espresso machine. Weight shifted to one foot. "That place," he says. "When you're there, the room feels right." A shiver runs through me. Customers begin to arrive, the spell broken by noise and movement. When I look back, the coin is gone. In its place lies a receipt, blank. That evening, after closing, I check the old records. The cafe keeps everything. Paper receipts bundled with string, stored in boxes that smell of dust and time. I tell myself I'm just curious, that I want to prove something, anything, to myself. I flip through years of transactions, and then I see it. The same blank receipt, again and again, always dated differently, always at the same time of day, always marked as paid. No items listed, no amount charged, just a name, written in careful, looping script. His name. I don't recognize it, but my hand trembles as if I should. When I look up, the cafe is empty, impossibly empty. The chairs are all right side up, the clock has stopped, and in the reflection of the darkened window, I see him sitting behind me, not in the chair, in my place. I don't scream. That's the first thing I notice. Later, when I try to catalog what went wrong and when, in the reflection, he sits where I should be behind the counter, hands folded, posture perfect, and my body does nothing dramatic at all. No cry, no stumble backward, just a slow, careful breath, as if my lungs are trying not to disturb the room. When I turn around, the cafe is empty. No customers, no coworkers. The lights hum at half strength, casting a thin, amber glow that flattens the shelves and softens the edges of everything. The clock on the wall remains stopped, its hands locked together at a minute that feels deliberately wrong. I tell myself I imagined it. I tell myself reflections lie. Glass bends, memory rearranges. Still, I don't go back behind the counter. I stand there, on the customer side, feeling oddly exposed, as though I've stepped out of my clothes without meaning to. The counter feels higher from here, more solid, a boundary, rather than a workstation. I reach for the receipt again. It's gone. The boxes of old records sit open at my feet, their contents undisturbed. I must have imagined the blank pages, the looping name, the sense of recognition that made my fingers ache. I close the boxes carefully, replacing the lids, aligning them just so. The act of tidying calms me. It always has. Order feels like proof of control. When I finally step outside, the street greets me with ordinary noise buses sighing at the curb, footsteps, a burst of laughter from somewhere down the block. The relief is so sharp it almost hurts. That night, I don't dream of the cafe. I dream of standing very still. Morning comes too quickly. I unlock the cafe alone. The air inside smells clean, neutral. No flowers wait on the counter. No coat drapes the chair by the window. For a moment, hope flickers. Then, I notice the chairs. They've been moved. Not dramatically, just enough that the pathways between tables feel subtly redirected. If I walk where I always do, my shoulder brushes a chair back. If I adjust my route slightly, everything fits. The chair by the window faces a few degrees more inward, toward the counter, toward where I stand. I don't touch it. I don't touch any of them. By mid-morning, the cafe fills as usual. Students type, regulars sip and linger. Hannah hums to herself while wiping down the espresso machine. "Did you rearrange last night?" she asks casually. "No," I say too quickly. She shrugs. "Looks better. More balanced." Balanced. The word echoes in my head as I move through my shift. I catch myself standing in the same spot again and again, the place he'd indicated, between the counter and the machine. Each time, I try to shift away, to occupy a different angle. Each time, something pulls me back. Not physically, not forcefully, Just preference, as though my body has learned where it belongs. He doesn't come that day. The absence feels heavier than his presence ever did. I glance toward the window chair more often than I mean to, my chest tightening each time I find it empty. Late afternoon, while wiping down tables, I notice a faint mark on the floor, a scuff. It matches the outline of the chair's legs exactly. I crouch to examine it, tracing the shape with my finger. The mark is old, worn deep into the wood, as if the chair has been dragged into this position countless times before. I stand slowly. How long has this place been here? I ask Hannah, trying to keep my voice light. She thinks for a moment. Longer than either of us. My mom used to come here when she was a student. Has it ever closed? Once, she says. Years ago. Renovations, I think. My stomach twists. That night, I stay late. I tell Hannah I've misplaced my keys. It's not exactly a lie when I reach into my pocket. My hand closes around something cold and unfamiliar. A coin. I wait until the cafe is empty. The chairs stacked. The lights dimmed. The silence settles in gently, like dust. I sit in the chair by the window. Immediately, the room feels different. Not warmer, not darker. Aligned. The hum of the refrigerator deepens, steady and reassuring. The counter no longer feels like a barrier. From here, I can see everything, the exact path I take during the rush, the angle at which I reach for cups, the spot where my shadow falls in the afternoon light. Understanding creeps in, quiet and unwelcome. This isn't about watching me, it's about holding me. I stand abruptly, heart racing, and move behind the counter. The feeling vanishes at once, replaced by a faint resistance, like pushing against water. No, I whisper. The lights flicker. I hear the bell above the door chime. He stands just inside, coat folded over his arm, expression serene. You're late, he says. For what? I ask, though I think I already know. He steps closer, stopping on the customer side of the counter. For the exchange. There is no exchange. He smiles. There always is. He reaches into his pocket and places something on the counter. A stack of receipts. All blank. All stamped paid. All these years, he says softly. Someone has always stood here. Kept the place anchored. When one leaves, another takes their place. My voice falters. I'm not agreeing to anything. You already have, he says gently. You know where to stand. I glance down. My feet are positioned perfectly, exactly where I always end up during the rush. The cafe hums. The chairs creak softly, adjusting themselves by a fraction of an inch. I look up at him, heart pounding. What happens to me? He considers this. You stay, he says. You're very good at it. And you? He steps back, toward the window chair. I rest. The clock on the wall ticks once. Then again, time resumes. Customers begin to arrive, the noise swelling like a tide. Hannah calls my name. The espresso machine hisses. When I blink, he's gone. The chair by the window is empty. My shift passes in a blur. I move where I'm meant to move. I stand where I'm meant to stand. The cafe feels satisfied. When closing time comes, Hannah waves goodbye. You coming tomorrow? She asks. I open my mouth. Yes, I hear myself say. That night, at home, I stand in my kitchen and stare at the corner by the sink. It feels wrong not to be there. And when I finally fall asleep, I dream of a cafe somewhere else. Quieter, older, and a woman behind the counter who looks almost like me, watching the door with patient eyes, waiting for someone to arrive and take her place. I begin with small rebellions. They feel safer that way, insignificant enough to be dismissed as accidents, but deliberate enough to remind myself that I still have choices. I change the order of the chairs by a single inch. I stand slightly to the right of my usual spot behind the counter. I linger in the back room longer than necessary, pretending to organize supplies that have already been alphabetized twice. Each time, the cafe responds. Not immediately, not obviously, but the air grows dense, as though the room is holding its breath. The refrigerator hum deepens. The lights flicker once, then steady themselves. Customers pause mid-sentence, brows knitting briefly, before continuing as if nothing has happened, and I feel a subtle pressure between my shoulder blades, urging me forward. Heck, the first time I leave early, it's because of a headache. A real one, I think. My temples throb, and the world feels slightly out of focus, like I'm looking through glass that hasn't been cleaned properly. Hannah notices before I say anything. "You look pale," she says. "Go home. I'll cover." We're south. Relief washes through me, sharp and almost painful. I untie my apron with trembling fingers and step outside into the cool evening air. The street smells of rain and exhaust, ordinary and grounding. I walk quickly, afraid that if I slow down, something will call me back. At home, the headache fades within minutes. That night, I sleep deeply, dreamlessly, and wake with the disorienting sensation of having missed something important. The next morning, the cafe's already open when I arrive. That's impossible. I have the keys. I always open. Inside, everything looks right. The chairs are arranged as they should be. The flowers, fresh again, line the counter. Hannah waves at me from behind the espresso machine. "Feeling better?" she asks. "Yes," I say automatically. Only later do I realize that she's standing where I usually stand. I watch her for a moment, unease prickling along my arms. She moves awkwardly, bumping her hip against the counter, hesitating before reaching for cups. The cafe feels restless, unsettled. A customer clears his throat impatiently. I step forward without thinking. The moment I take my place, the room exhales. Hannah relaxes visibly, her movements smoothing out. She glances at me, confused. "Sorry," she says. "I don't know what's wrong with me today." I force a smile. After that, leaving becomes harder. When I try to take a day off, my phone rings before I can enjoy the idea. The manager's voice is apologetic, strained. "We really need you," she says. "Just for a few hours." When I say no, something cold coils in my chest. Not guilt, exactly, but the sense of having disappointed a living thing. That night, the cafe appears in my dreams again. It's empty, dust motes drifting in the pale light. I stand behind the counter, rooted, while the door remains stubbornly closed. Outside, figures gather customers, co-workers, strangers all peering in, their faces indistinct. "You're needed," a voice murmurs. I wake with my heart pounding and the taste of coffee on my tongue. The flowers begin to change. Their petals grow thicker, waxier, as though dipped in something to preserve them. When I brush against them, they leave a faint residue on my skin, a slick warmth that takes too long to wash away. One afternoon, I snap. A man complains loudly about his drink, slamming his cup onto the counter. The sound echoes too sharply, slicing through the cafe's careful calm. Before I can stop myself, I step out from behind the counter. "I can't do this anymore," I say, my voice trembling. "You'll have to leave." The cafe goes silent. Every eye turns toward me. The man's expression shifts from irritation to confusion. "I just wanted leave," I repeat. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, chairs scrape back. Customers stand, murmuring, gathering their things. One by one, they exit, casting uncertain glances over their shoulders. The bell above the door rings again and again until the cafe is empty. I stand alone in the sudden quiet, chest heaving. The clock stops, the lights dim. From the corner of my eye, I see movement. He sits in the chair by the window, coat folded neatly, watching me with something like approval. "You see," he says softly, "you can't abandon it. You are it." "I won't stay," I whisper. "I won't." He stands, approaching the counter. "Then you'll have to be replaced." My stomach drops. "By who?" He smiles, and for the first time, there's something almost sad in his eyes. There's always someone tired enough, lonely enough, someone who stands in the right place without being asked. Cafe hum rises, insistent now, vibrating through my bones. I feel the pressure again stronger, urging me back behind the counter. I resist, The floor seems to tilt. The lights flicker wildly. Somewhere, glass shatters. Pain lances through my head, white and blinding. I cry out, clutching the edge of the counter as the room warps and bends around me. Stop. I gasp. He hesitates, just for a moment, and in that pause, I run. I don't remember reaching the door. I don't remember the bell ringing. I only remember the sudden rush of cold air, the street spinning around me as I stagger onto the pavement. Behind me, the cafe goes dark. I don't look back. I don't return home. I walk until my legs ache, until the city thins and the buildings grow unfamiliar. I find a cheap hotel near the station and pay in cash, hands shaking, in the mirror of the narrow bathroom. My reflection looks wrong, hollow, as though something has been scooped out of me. I press my palm to the glass. It's cold. For the first time in months. Nothing presses back. I sink onto the bed, exhausted, and let myself believe just for a little while that I've escaped. Outside, somewhere far away, a cafe door unlocks itself and waits. The hotel room is smaller than I expected. Not claustrophobic, just precise. Everything has been arranged to fit exactly where it belongs. The bed pressed against one wall, the desk aligned beneath a window that looks out onto brick. The bathroom door opening only as far as it needs to. There's a comfort in that, I think. A lie I let myself believe as I sit on the edge of the mattress and listen to the muted sounds of the station below. Trains arriving, trains leaving, movement without obligation. I sleep for 12 hours. When I wake, my body feels strangely light, as though a weight I didn't know I was carrying has been set down beside me. The itch beneath my skin is gone. The faint pressure between my shoulder blades, the one that guided me back to the counter every time, has loosened its grip. I smile at myself in the mirror. I look ordinary again. I spend the day walking. I don't go anywhere in particular. I let the city choose for me, left at this corner, right at the next. I drink coffee from a paper cup that tastes like nothing. I eat a sandwich, standing up, crumbs falling to the pavement. No one watches me. No one waits. By evening, exhaustion settles in gently. The honest kind that comes from motion, rather than vigilance. I return to the hotel with sore feet and a head full of noise, and for the first time in a long while, I feel something close to peace. That's when the phone rings. I stare at it for a long moment before answering. I don't recognize the number. Hello? Silence. I almost hang up when a familiar sound filters through the line, soft, ambient, intimate. The hum of a refrigerator. My throat tightens. You don't have to come back, he says. His voice is quieter than I remember. Less certain. I'm not, I reply. I left. Yes, he agrees. You did. I grip the edge of the desk, knuckles whitening. Then why are you calling me? Because it's still empty, he says. And emptiness behaves strangely. No, I hang up. The room feels different now, subtly altered, like furniture shifted while I wasn't looking. The bed seems too close to the wall, the desk too high. I move the chair. It scrapes loudly across the floor, the sound sharp and satisfying. I drag it into the center of the room and sit down, deliberately misaligned with everything else. Nothing happens. I laugh. A shaky, relieved sound. That night, I dream of the cafe one last time. It's bright, newly painted. The windows gleam. Behind the counter stands a young woman I don't recognize, her hair pulled back, her posture tentative. She fumbles with the espresso machine, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to correct her. In the chair by the window, no one sits. The chair waits. I wake with tears on my cheeks and no clear memory of why. Days pass, then weeks. The cafe fades into something distant and unreal, like a job you quit years ago but still list on forms because you can't remember what came before it. I find work at a small bakery across town. The hours are early, the customers brief and sleepy. I stand where I like. I move when I want. Sometimes, though, I feel it. A momentary resistance when I shift my weight. A sense of wrongness when I linger too long in one place. Once, while wiping flour from the counter, I notice my hands are trembling, for no reason I can name. That evening, as I walk home, I pass a cafe I've never seen before. It's tucked between two shops, its sign unremarkable, its windows warmly lit. Through the glass, I glimpse shelves, tables, a counter laid out in a way that makes my chest ache with familiarity. A man sits by the window, different face, same posture. Our eyes meet for a fraction of a second. He looks relieved. I keep walking. At home, I dream of standing again, not trapped, not held, but present, necessary. I wake with the lingering sense of having missed a shift. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine the cafe without anyone behind the counter. Cups untouched, chairs drifting out of alignment, the hum growing erratic, searching. A place can survive without a name, without customers, without flowers. But some places, quiet places, patient places, cannot survive without a position. And every so often, when I stand too still for too long, I feel it ask me gently, politely, "Are you sure you don't want to come back?" I always move before it finishes the question, but I know now how it works. When a place loses what anchors it, it doesn't chase, it waits. And one day, someone tired will stand in exactly the right spot, and the chair by the window will finally stop being empty. Story 3. The restaurant learned to whisper at night, not the friendly murmur of diners or the soft clink of cutlery against porcelain. Those sounds belong to the evening, to wine and conversation and the ritual of being seen. After midnight, when the last table had been cleared and the doors were locked, the building spoke differently. It exhaled. It shifted its weight. It remembered itself. I noticed this because I was new. New people hear what others filter out. I worked the dish pit, the least glamorous corner of the restaurant, tucked behind swinging doors that never quite closed properly. Steam coated everything in a thin film of warmth, and the air smelled of detergent, garlic, and old stone. The walls were thick, too thick, the kind you only find in buildings that predate modern scents. They told me the place had been standing since the late 1800s. A merchant's house once, then a boarding hall, then something else no one could quite remember. The restaurant had inherited it the way one inherits a family illness quietly, without choice. My hours were late. By the time I arrived, the dining room upstairs glowed softly, full of murmured voices and the faint swell of music drifting from hidden speakers. Down where I stood, the soundtrack was mechanical, water rushing, plates sliding, the low, steady growl of machines that never truly slept. And underneath it all, music. The first time I heard it, I thought it was coming from upstairs. Some kind of playlist bleeding through the vents. Classical, maybe strings, slow and deliberate. Each note held just a little too long. I kept watching. The second time, I realized the sound was coming from below. I paused, hands submerged in cloudy water, and listened. The melody was faint but unmistakable now, a careful arrangement, patient and formal, like something practiced over many years. It didn't echo the way sound should in a basement. It felt contained, pressed flat against the walls. I asked Marco, one of the servers, about it during a smoke break. Music? He said, frowning. No. We turn everything off after close. I hear it during service. I said, late. He laughed, exhaling smoke into the cold air. That's just the building. Old pipes, old bones, old bones. That phrase stayed with me longer than it should have. The dumbwaiter sat at the end of the hall, a narrow, steel-framed shaft with a small platform inside, used for sending plated dishes down from the kitchen above. It hadn't been used in years. Modern renovations had made it unnecessary, and management preferred it sealed. They'd bolted the doors shut on our level, thick metal plates screwed directly into the wall. No handle, no keyhole. Don't mess with it, the manager said when she noticed me looking at it one night. That thing goes down to the old basement. Not safe. What's down there? I asked. She hesitated just long enough to notice. Nothing, she said. That's the point. The music came back the following week. Stronger, clearer. I stood alone in the dish pit, the rest of the staff gone, the restaurant settling into its late-night quiet. The melody threaded through the hum of machines, weaving itself into the space between sounds. Violins, I thought, and something else beneath them, a faint metallic rhythm. like cutlery being arranged carefully on a table. I turned off the tap. The music continued. It rose and fell with deliberate timing, swelling into something that felt almost celebratory before retreating into restraint. I found myself holding my breath, afraid that if I moved, it would stop or worse, notice me. When it finally faded, the silence felt wrong. I didn't sleep much that night. The next evening, a delivery arrived late. A single plate. No ticket. No explanation. It came up through the dumbwaiter. I heard the mechanism before I saw it. A low clank, followed by the unmistakable whine of pulleys straining against old weight. The sealed doors shuddered once. Then again, I froze, my heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. A thin line of red crept out from beneath the metal plate bolted over the dumbwaiter door. It pooled on the floor, thick and glossy, catching the overhead light. Blood. No. Steak juice, I told myself. Rare steak. It happens. The bolts rattled. With a sharp metallic crack, one of them snapped free. The plate slid forward, pushed from behind by something unseen, until it clattered onto the tile at my feet. I stared down at it. The steak was arranged beautifully seared, just enough to mark the surface, edges glistening. A sprig of rosemary rested on top, fresh and green. The plate itself was warm, almost hot, too hot to have come from an unheated basement. Beneath the steak lay a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. The note was written in a careful, practiced script, each letter formed with deliberate attention. The ink was dark, uneven, as though mixed hastily. It read, "A touch too salty tonight." The music began again, not faint this time, not distant. It filled the basement, swelling into a full orchestration that pressed against my ears and chest, vibrating the plates on the racks, rattling the pipes overhead. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the sink. Somewhere below, knives rang together. Somewhere below, an audience waited. And for the first time since I started working there, I understood something with sickening clarity. The basement wasn't abandoned. It was still hosting, still preparing, still listening for applause. And whatever was down there had noticed that I was finally listening back. The music stops the moment the manager arrives. That timing is not accidental. I understand that now. But at the time, it felt like a mercy, like the building itself had decided I'd had enough for one night. The final note thins, stretches, and dissolves into the hum of the refrigeration units, leaving my ears ringing with absence. I'm still standing there when she comes through the swinging doors, heels clicking sharply against the tile. She takes in the scene at a glance. The plate on the floor, the snapped bolt, the thin red sheen spreading outward in lazy arcs. She doesn't ask what happened. She doesn't look surprised. She sighs a long, tired sound and closes the distance between us. "You shouldn't be here alone this late," she says. My mouth opens, but nothing comes out. My tongue feels thick, useless. Instead, I gesture weakly toward the dumbwaiter door, toward the plate that should not exist. She crouches and examines it, careful not to touch the food itself. Her face tightens, not with fear, but with something closer to irritation. "They're getting sloppy," she murmurs. "They." I finally manage. She straightens slowly. "Go wash your hands." "You." Now, her tone brooks no argument, and I obey, moving on instinct more than sense, scrubbing my hands under hot water until my skin burns. When I turn back, she's already lifting the plate, wrapping it in a thick towel. Her movements efficient and practiced. She sets it on the stainless steel prep table and reaches for a small container from the shelf, coarse salt. She sprinkles a measured amount over the steak. The smell changes immediately. The rich, savory scent dulls, flattening into something acrid and faintly metallic. The surface of the meat darkens, tightening, as though it's being cooked again without heat. She folds the towel around it and carries it toward the service elevator. "You're not sending it back down," I blurt. She pauses. Then she looks at me. Really looks. "You think this is a complaint?" she asks quietly. The way she says it sends a chill through me. She motions for me to follow. We stop in front of the dumbwaiter. The broken bolt lies on the floor between us, twisted and useless. She nudges it aside with her shoe. "They don't like inconsistency." she says. They've always been particular. Who are they? I ask. She hesitates, fingers resting against the cold metal of the door. For a moment, she looks older than I've ever seen, her lines etched deep by a kind of vigilance that never quite lets go. The house, she says finally, and what it remembers. She opens a small access panel beside the dumbwaiter and presses a switch hidden behind it. The platform groans as it descends, the sound of old machinery waking reluctantly from sleep. The smell rises first, not rot, not decay. Warmth, butter, wine, blood. A layered scent, complex and intimate, like a kitchen mid-service but underscored by something else. Something that reminds me of iron and dust and long-closed rooms. The platform stops. She places the wrapped plate inside and steps back. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the platform begins to move again, not downward, but upward, rising an inch before settling back into place, as if testing its freedom. A soft clink echoes up the shaft. Silverware. Acknowledgement. She closes the panel and turns to me. Rule 1, she says. You don't engage. Ever. Then why? Rule 2, she continues. If something comes up, it goes back down, properly seasoned. And rule 3, she meets my eyes. You don't listen. I swallow. You hear it too. Yes, she says. And no, she gestures toward the dish pit. You're new. New ears hear everything. Eventually, you learn what to tune out. Like, quit it. What if I can't? She considers this. Then you won't last. And the rest of the night passes in a strained quiet. The dumbwaiter remains still. The music does not return. But the absence feels temporary, like a held breath. Before she leaves, the manager stops beside me. You didn't imagine the note, she says softly. They critique everyone. Why keep this place open? I ask. She looks around at the stone walls, the high ceiling, the careful blend of old and new. Her expression softens. Because some traditions don't like being interrupted, she says. And because they tip well. She leaves. I finish my shift in silence. At home, sleep comes in fragments. I dream of long tables laid out beneath low ceilings, of guests seated patiently, napkins folded just so. I hear the scrape of chairs, the clearing of throats. When I wake, my hands smell faintly of salt. The next evening, as I arrive for work, a new sign hangs beside the staff schedule. House rules. Don't open sealed doors. Don't touch what isn't served. Don't stay past the final note. Beneath it, written in smaller letters, as though added later, applause is optional. Attendance is not. As I tie my apron, the building settles around me, and far below, something sharpens its knives. The invitation doesn't arrive on paper. It arrives as timing. I start noticing it the way you notice a headache forming, not as pain, not yet, but as a pressure that rearranges your thoughts around it. Shifts change subtly. My name appears at the bottom of the schedule more often. Closing duties become mine by default. Someone always volunteers to leave early. Someone always forgets. By the end of the week, I am alone downstairs every night. The manager doesn't say a word about it. The music returns on Friday. It begins as a vibration in the soles of my shoes, a low resonance that makes the dish racks tremble like leaves caught in a passing train. Then come the strings, tuned precisely, drawn slow and careful, as if the musicians are warming their hands before touching their instruments. I try not to listen. Rule 3. I turn on the water. I let plates clatter louder than necessary. I hum tunelessly under my breath, but the melody weaves itself through everything under the splash of the sink, inside the hollow thud of stacked porcelain, through the soft hiss of steam escaping valves. The dumbwaiter rattles once. I freeze. It doesn't open. The metal plates bolted across the shaft hold firm. Still, the sound lingers, a polite clearing of the throat. Then a different sound joins the music. Applause, not loud, not enthusiastic. A measured, restrained clapping, palms meeting palms in unison, slow and deliberate. the kind of applause that evaluates rather than celebrates. My stomach twists. I remember the sign by the schedule. Attendance is not optional. I don't know how long I stand there, hands submerged in cooling water, heart pounding so hard it blurs my vision. The applause fades. The music swells, rich and full now, and beneath it, something else emerges. A voice, not singing, speaking. I can't make out the words at first. They slide past my understanding, syllables shaped by an accent that belongs to another century. Gradually, meaning coalesces, presented with care. The voice intones. Prepared as instructed, I back away from the sink. The dumbwaiter shudders. A thin seam opens where the metal plates meet, not enough to see through, just enough to let light leak out. Warm, amber light spills onto the floor, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of a dining room mid-service. I think of the manager's face when she salted the steak, of the way she spoke about consistency. I didn't make anything, I whisper, unsure who I'm speaking to. The applause stops. The silence that follows is worse. The voice resumes, sharper now. Attendance, it says, not contribution. The seam widens. The bolt strain, metal groaning in protest, and I feel a pull not on my body, but on my attention. The light beckons, promising warmth, purpose, belonging. I imagine long tables laid out below, guests waiting patiently, their expectations as precise as their cutlery placement. I think of my life outside these walls, my small apartment, my secondhand furniture, the quiet evenings that blur together without distinction. I think of how invisible I am most days, how easy it would be to step into a role where my presence matters. The seam snaps shut. I gasp, stumbling back as the dumbwaiter goes still. The music falters, then resumes, slightly off-key. A message delivered. I don't leave immediately. I finish my shift with shaking hands, every sound amplified. When I finally step outside, the night air feels thin, insubstantial, like it might tear if I breathe too deeply. I consider quitting. The thought feels distant, abstract, like planning a trip to a place that doesn't exist anymore. The next evening, a new object waits for me by the sink. A folded napkin, crisp, white, immaculate. Inside it, a small silver spoon rests, polished to a mirror shine. Engraved along the handle, in delicate script, is a single word. Attendons. I don't touch it. I don't need to. The message is clear. Downstairs, the orchestra tunes, and somewhere beneath the building, chairs scrape softly against stone, adjusting themselves by fractions of an inch, making room. I try to avoid the spoon. That sounds ridiculous, even in my own head. But the thing has weight now, not physical weight, though it's heavy enough, a kind of narrative gravity. Wherever I am in the kitchen, I know exactly where it sits by the sink, folded neatly inside the napkin, catching the light at a certain angle. If I turn my back on it, I can still feel it behind my eyes, like an unfinished sentence. I don't kid. I tell myself I'm waiting for the right moment, a day shift, a replacement, a clean break that doesn't feel like running. The house, it seems, is also waiting. That night, the manager leaves early. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't make eye contact. She simply gathers her coat and keys and goes upstairs, heels echoing once, twice, and then fading into nothing. I am alone. The kitchen lights dim automatically at midnight, sliding down to their after-hours glow. Stainless steel turns soft and shadowed. The dish pit hum deepens, settling into a steady, almost comforting rhythm. The music begins without ceremony. No warm-up, no gradual tuning. It arrives whole, a full-bodied swell of strings and low brass, rich and resonant, filling the basement with a sound so complete it feels architectural, as though the music itself is load-bearing. The walls vibrate, the racks tremble. Water in the sink ripples in perfect concentric rings. I grip the edge of the counter, breath shallow. This isn't happening, I whisper. The dumbwaiter answers, not with movement, with presence. The metal plates over the shaft glow faintly, seams pulsing in time with the music. Light bleeds through again, brighter now, steady and inviting. And beneath the music, I hear it clearly for the first time. Cutlery, not clattering, not dropped, placed, one piece at a time. Knife, fork, spoon, knife, fork, spoon. A table being set. I back away, heart hammering, until my shoulders hit the far wall. The air feels thicker, resistant, like moving through syrup. Every instinct screams to leave, to run up the stairs, out the door, into the night. I take one step toward the exit. The music stutters. A sharp discord ripples through the basement, making me gasp. The lights flicker violently. Somewhere below, chairs scrape back all at once, a sound of collective displeasure. I freeze. The voice returns, not from one direction, from everywhere. Please remain seated. I'm not seated. I choke. A pause. Then, almost indulgent. Correction pending. The dumbwaiter lurches. The bolts tear free with a sound like snapping bones. The metal plates peel away from the wall, bending outward as the platform rises, slow and deliberate, revealing the shaft beneath. Warm light floods the basement. The smell hits me next, butter. Wine, herbs, iron layered and intoxicating. My mouth waters despite my terror. The platform stops level with the floor. There is no food on it. There is a chair, dark wood, high-backed. Its legs are worn smooth at the bottom, polished by decades, centuries of use. The seat cushion is upholstered in deep red fabric, threadbare in places, as though countless bodies have shifted there, restless and waiting. On the seat rests the napkin, a spoon. I shake my head. No. The music swells, pressing against my chest, vibrating my ribs. The pull intensifies, not a force, not hands, but inevitability. The sense that the world has already accounted for my refusal and adjusted accordingly. You have been present, the voice says. You have listened. You have remained. I didn't agree. I whisper. Attendance, it replies calmly. Is agreement. My feet move. Not fast. Not against my will in any dramatic sense. Just forward. Each step feels right in a way that terrifies me. The resistance vanishes as I approach the chair, replaced by a deep, sinking relief, the sensation of fitting into a space that has been waiting too long. I stop inches from the seat. Up close, I can see faint impressions in the cushion. Not just one shape, but many, layered over one another like memories pressed into fabric. Some are small, some wide, some oddly shaped. Sit, the voice says. No. I manage, summoning everything I have left. The music falters. The orchestra drifts out of sync, strings slipping against one another, brass wavering. A murmur rises from below. Not voices, exactly, but dissatisfaction. A low communal unease. The chair creaks. It inches forward on its own. I scream in a raw, broken sound and stumble backward. My heel catches on the edge of the platform. I fall hard, pain exploding through my spine as the chair looms over me, impossibly close. And then, a crash. The music collapses into noise. Above us, a door slams open. The manager's voice cuts through the chaos. Enough. Everything stops. The light dims. The chair freezes mid-motion. The voice retreats into silence like a reprimanded child. The manager stands at the top of the stairs, breathless, hair disheveled, eyes blazing with fury and fear. I told you, she says. Not to me, but to the house. He's not ready. Silence. Slowly. The platform descends. The chair disappears into the shaft, the light retreating with it. The dumbwaiter slams shut, metal sealing itself with a final, echoing clang. The music dissolves into nothing. The manager rushes to my side, hauling me to my feet with surprising strength. You have to leave, she says urgently. Now, before it decides otherwise. What is this place? I gasp. She doesn't answer. She just pushes me toward the stairs. As I stumble upward, I hear her mutter something under her breath, not angry this time. Apologetic. I'm sorry, she says softly. They like you. That's the worst part. I don't stop running until I'm outside. gulping cold air like it's the first breath I've ever taken. Behind me, the restaurant stands quiet and ordinary. But deep below, I know the orchestra hasn't packed up. They're just waiting for the next adjustment, for the moment when a chair is finally filled. I don't go back. Not that night. Not the next. I tell myself that leaving was enough, that crossing the threshold broke whatever pattern the house was trying to complete. I stay with a friend on the other side of the city, sleeping on a sofa that smells faintly of laundry detergent and unfamiliar skin. Every sound startles me awake. Traffic, footsteps, the radiator knocking like someone clearing their throat. But no music follows me. That's what I cling to. Days pass. Then a week. The restaurant doesn't call. No missed shifts. No messages. It's as if I was never on the schedule at all. When I check my bank account, my last paycheck is there. Deposited on time, the amount exact to the penny. Too exact. I try to forget the smell of butter and iron, the feel of that chair's cushion, worn into shapes my body had recognized too easily. I apply for other jobs. I wash dishes in my friend's sink to calm myself, listening to the honest noise of water and porcelain. For a while, it works. Then the dreams begin to change. At first, I'm only listening. I dream of music without images, strings, tuning, a distant rustle like fabric settling, the polite hush of an audience preparing itself. I wake with the echo of it still in my chest, my heart beating in time with a rhythm I can't quite recall. Then I start seeing the room. The basement dining hall stretches farther than it should, its ceiling lost in shadow. Tables gleam under low light, laid with care. Candles burn without smoke. Every seat is filled but one, always one. I stand at the edge of the dream, watching, knowing with a certainty that feels borrowed that the final movement can't begin until the vacancy is resolved. One morning, my phone rings. It's the manager. I almost don't answer. "I won't keep you," she says quickly. Her voice sounds older now, tired in a way that has nothing to do with hours worked. "I just thought you should know." "Know what?" I ask. There's a pause. They've accepted a substitute. My stomach drops. "Who?" She exhales slowly. "A server. New. Eager. He stayed late. Listened." I close my eyes. "The house likes him," she continues. "He fits well." "That's good," I say, though the word tastes wrong. "Yes," she agrees. "It is." Another pause. Heavier this time. "But seats wear out," she adds quietly, "and performances end." The line goes dead. That night, the dreams stop. Weeks turn into months. I move apartments. I take a job washing dishes at a small, forgettable place with thin walls and modern wiring, nothing old enough to remember anything important. I learn how to leave rooms without looking back. Sometimes, though, when I'm alone late at night, I hear it. Not music. Not exactly. A sense of timing. The feeling that if I were to stand in just the right place, if I were to remain still long enough, something would arrange itself around me. Something would recognize the shape I make in space and decide I belong to it. I never test that feeling. Years later, walking past the old neighborhood, I notice the restaurant has changed its name. New sign, new paint, same building. Through the window, I glimpse white tablecloths and candlelight. In the basement, far below street level, a dumbwaiter hums. A performance is underway. The audience is pleased. And somewhere in the depths of that house, chairs are still being counted not for who is present, but for who is missing. Because places like that don't stop wanting. They only learn patience. And every symphony, no matter how long it waits, believes it will someday reach its final note. Story 4. The pub smells like damp wood and old smoke, even before you open the door. It's the kind of smell that clings to coats, to hair, to memory, a mixture of spilled ale soaked deep into the floorboards and decades of winters that never quite let the walls dry out. The sign outside creaks softly in the wind, its paint cracked and flaking, the name half erased by time and weather. Inside, the light is low and yellow, deliberately so. Nothing here is meant to be sharp or modern. The ceiling beams sag slightly, bowed by centuries of weight, and the floor slopes just enough that you're never entirely sure whether you're standing straight or the building is gently leaning into you. I start my shift just before dusk. I am the newest hire at temporary placement, they tell me. Extra hands for the busy season. The regulars nod at me with polite indifference, already accustomed to faces that come and go. Only the pub itself feels permanent. The landlord, Mr. Hawthorne, shows me around with the air of a man reciting something memorized long ago. Bar's here, cellar stairs there. Don't go past the rope. He gestures toward the far corner. That's where I see it. A small round table, half hidden by shadow, pressed into the darkest part of the room where the light from the wall lamps thins into something brown and uncertain. 2 chairs sit neatly on either side, their backs turned slightly inward, as if in private conversation. Above it, nailed into the beam, hangs a small brass plaque. Shasan. I pose. Something about that corner feels occupied. Not by people, not yet, but by expectation. The air there seems heavier, reluctant to move. We don't use that table, Mr. Hawthorne says, noticing my attention. Why? I ask. He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he adjusts a stack of menus that are already perfectly aligned. House rule, he says finally. Older than me, bring Disraeli progress. I nod, because nodding is easier than pressing. The pub fills as night settles in. Locals drift in with the weather clinging to them, boots thudding softly against the floor, voices low and familiar. The fire crackles, glasses clink. Somewhere, a fiddle murmurs from the radio, its tune half swallowed by static. I fall into rhythm. Pour, wipe, smile, step aside, and slowly, I stop noticing the table until someone sits there. It happens just after 9. The door opens without the bell ringing, or maybe it does, and I simply don't hear it. A family enters quietly, a man, a woman, and a young boy between them. They're dressed oddly, though it takes me a moment to realize why. Their clothes are old-fashioned, not costume old, not theatrical, just out of time. The man wears a wool suit, neatly pressed, the fabric dull with age. The woman's dress falls straight and modest, her hair pinned close to her head. The boy holds her hand with both of his shoes polished to a soft shine. They don't speak as they cross the room. They don't look around. They walk directly to the corner, to table 13. I feel a tightening in my chest. I glance toward Mr. Hawthorne, expecting him to intervene, to call out, to stop them, to do something. But he's busy at the till, back turned, his shoulders hunched as he counts change with deliberate slowness. The family sits. The chairs don't scrape. The boy climbs onto his seat without sound. The man folds his napkin. The woman smooths her hands over the table's surface, once, as if confirming it's real. They sit perfectly still. No menus, no glances toward the bar. Just waiting. I stand frozen with the tray in my hands, heart thudding loud enough that I'm sure someone must hear it. Table 13, I whisper to myself. House rule. A rule implies a reason, and a consequence. A regular nudges past me, chuckling. New, are you? Yes, I say faintly. He follows my gaze, squints toward the corner, then frowns. What are you staring at? My mouth goes dry. That family. What family? The tray trembles in my hands. I look again. They're still there, still waiting, still silent. I'll take their order, I say suddenly. The words surprise me as much as they do him. The regular shrugs. Suit yourself. I move before I can stop myself. Each step toward the corner feels heavier than the last. The sounds of the pub dulling behind me as if cotton has been packed into my ears. The light thins. The warmth drops away. When I reach the table, the woman looks up at me. Her eyes are wrong. Not empty. Not dead. Just unfinished. Smooth. Unfocused. Like wax before it sets. The man turns next. His face is the same. So is the boy's. Where features should be eyes, nose, mouth. There's only pale, seamless surface, gently contoured but utterly blank. I stagger back, bile rising in my throat. The woman tilts her head slightly, an imitation of curiosity. We're ready, she says. Her voice is soft, polite, and absolutely wrong. Behind me, the pub noise resumes all at once, laughter, clinking glasses. the fire popping sharply as if nothing unusual is happening at all. I turn to run. I don't make it far. Someone grabs my arm. Mr. Hawthorne. His face is drained of color. "What did you do?" he whispers. My voice breaks. "They're not. I told you," he says urgently, gripping harder. "You don't serve that table." On my tray, unnoticed until now, sits a plate. I don't remember picking it up. The meat on it writhes. Not cooked, not raw, but alive with white movement. Maggots spill over the edge, dropping silently onto the floorboards, disappearing between the cracks as if they've always belonged there. Mr. Hawthorne stares at the tray, then at me. "Oh no," he breathes. "You acknowledge them." From the corner, chairs scrape softly. The family is standing, and for the first time since they arrived, they are no longer waiting. Mr. Hawthorne pulls me behind the bar so hard my shoulder knocks against the wood. "Don't look at them," he hisses. "Whatever you do, don't look back." "I have to." I choke. "You don't," he snaps. "That's the point. The pub hasn't gone quiet. That's the worst part." Laughter still ripples near the fireplace. Someone slams a pint down, foam spilling over the rim. A couple argues cheerfully about darts near the back wall. Life continues in a way that feels obscene, like a joke told at a funeral. But the corner, the air there is thickened, darkened, as if soaked through with something old. I feel it against my skin, a pressure that crawls rather than presses. They stood up. I whisper, "I know," Mr. Hawthorne says. His hand is trembling where it grips my sleeve. "That means you've moved things along." "Along what?" He glances around the bar, then leans closer. His breath smells of stale ale and fear. "This place wasn't always a pub," he says. "Not really." I swallow hard. "You said the rule was older than you. Older than the building." He corrects. "Older than the road." He reaches beneath the counter and pulls out a leather-bound book, its spine cracked, the pages swollen with damp. He opens it carefully, as if the thing might bite. "These are not accounts," he says quietly. "They're apologies. BC's." He flips through pages filled with cramped handwriting, names, dates, short, pleading notes written in different inks and hands. "We didn't know. We thought it was a joke. We served them anyway." My stomach twists. "Served who?" I ask, though I already know. "The 13th table," he says. "It used to be outside, back when this was just a coaching stop and the land belonged to someone else. There was more." The music on the radio warps slightly, the fiddle stretching into a sour note before snapping back into tune. "Travelers came through," he continues. "Families, strangers. Some stayed the night, some didn't. And some?" I prompt. He closes the book. "Some were never meant to leave." The sound reaches us from the corner, a chair tipping over, slowly, deliberately. "Ignore it," he murmurs. "They only gain shape when you acknowledge them." "What are they?" I whisper. Mr. Hawthorne hesitates. "They're what happens when hunger meets patience," he says finally. "When people are forgotten in the right place for long enough." My eyes sting. "The family were never buried properly," he says. "They were sealed in the cellar during a hard winter. No food, no light, no names left to remember them by." My skin crawls. "They waited," he goes on, "and waited. And when the pub was built on top of that ground, they learned something. Might at Fresk was going, what? That people come to places like this to be seen," he says. "To be served, to be acknowledged." A wet sound echoes from the corner. "Chewing." "I didn't serve them." I protest weakly. "I just went over." "You spoke to them," he says. "That's enough." Another chair scrapes. Closer. "They don't eat food," Mr. Hawthorne says. "Not really. They eat attention, recognition, the idea that someone still sees them as human." My throat tightens. "And the maggots? They show you what's left when you finish the transaction." The floorboards creak behind us. I feel it now, a presence at my back, cold and expectant. The pub lights flicker, shadows stretching too long, bending toward the corner like plants seeking light. "I didn't know," I whisper. "No one ever does," he says gently. That's why the rule exists. The boy's voice drifts through the pub. Mister, every muscle in my body locks. The voice is polite. Young, almost shy. Mister, it repeats. We've been waiting. Mr. Hawthorne's grip tightens painfully. Do not answer. I'm hungry, the voice says. I taste bile. We all are, Mr. Hawthorne mutters. That's the problem. Something touches my elbow. Not a hand. Not exactly. A pressure, cool and waxy, like fingers pressed through cloth. I scream. The pub lights explode into brightness. Glass shatters somewhere. People shout, confused, annoyed. And then, nothing. The corner is empty. No family. No chairs. No table. Just bare floor and dust. As if the space has never been occupied at all. The regulars stare at me like I've lost my mind. Mr. Hawthorne releases my arm slowly. They'll be back, he says, voice hollow. They always are. When? I ask. He looks at the beam where the plaque once hung. When someone new decides rules are optional, my gaze drops to my hands. Streaked across my palm is a faint smear of something pale. Not grease, not blood, wax. And beneath the pub, far below the cellar stones, something shifts, patient, offended, and very much aware that it has been noticed again. Mr. Hawthorne closes the pub early, not with an announcement, not with apologies. He simply locks the door, turns the sign to closed, and lowers the lamps until the room settles into a dim, amber hush that feels more like a chapel than a public house. The regulars grumble as they leave, annoyed, more than alarmed. One of them claps me on the shoulder and says something about new staff nerves. Another jokes about the ale being stronger than usual. Their laughter follows them out into the night and fades, leaving only the fire's low crackle and the quiet creak of old wood adjusting to emptiness. The corner stays empty. That doesn't help. I sit on a stool behind the bar, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I don't remember making. My palms still feel coated, like something invisible hasn't quite let go of me. I keep wiping them on my apron, but the sensation persists, not wet, not sticky, just present. You should have let me send you home, Mr. Hawthorne says, his voice gentler now. I saw their faces, I say. Or the lack of them. He nods. That means they're closer than they were. To what? He looks toward the corner. To finishing what they started. The fire pops sharply, sending sparks up the chimney. Sit tight, he says. I'll show you something. He disappears into the back and returns with a small wooden box, its surface worn smooth by handling. He sets it on the bar between us and opens it carefully. Inside are tokens, not coins. Not exactly. Small objects wrapped in scraps of cloth. A child's button, yellowed and chipped. A broken thimble. A wedding ring bent out of shape. A piece of bone polished smooth like driftwood. These are acknowledgments, he says quietly. Given freely, or taken. By who? I ask. The house, he replies. Or what lives where the house learned to stand. I stare at the objects, dread coiling tighter in my chest. Why are you keeping them? Because someone has to remember what they cost. He lifts the button gently, reverent. This belonged to the boy, or what passed for him by the end. My throat tightens. You said they were sealed in the cellar. Yes, he says. But sealing isn't forgetting, and forgetting is the only thing that starves them. I look toward the corner again. I can almost feel it watching, not from a direction, but from a condition. A readiness to be noticed. What happens now? I ask. Mr. Hawthorne exhales slowly. Now, you choose whether this ends with you. My heart stutters. That's not a choice. It is, he says. It's just not a fair one. He closes the box. They'll try again. They always do. Subtler this time. Politer. Why me? I whisper. Because you're new, he says. And because you went to them. I didn't know. None of us ever do, he says softly. But knowledge isn't what binds you. Recognition is. The pub groans, a low, settling sound that ripples through the beams. The fire dims, as if someone has drawn a breath through it. From the corner, a chair scrapes, Just one. Slow. Measured. I told you not to look. Mr. Hawthorne murmurs. I didn't. I say and realize with a jolt that it's true. My eyes are fixed on the bar, on the box, on my own reflection in the varnished wood. You don't have to see them, he continues. They already know, you see. The air cools. A pressure settles across the room, gentle but insistent, like a hand placed flat against my back. I feel an urge, sudden and overwhelming, to apologize, to explain myself, to step into that corner and make things right. I can fix this, I hear myself say. Mr. Hawthorne stiffens. No, but I floater. I can. I insist, my voice shaking. I started it. The pressure eases. Just a fraction. Interest. They don't want punishment, he says urgently. They want continuity. Someone to keep the rule. What rule? I ask. His jaw tightens. That the 13th table is never served. Silence stretches. Then, softly, from the corner, we can wait. The voice isn't the boy's this time. It's older, worn thin, patient beyond comprehension. Mr. Hawthorne closes his eyes. If you stay, he says, they'll bind to you. You'll feel it every night. You'll keep them from crossing the room, from being acknowledged again. And if I leave, the pressure sharpens. They'll find someone else, he says. Someone less careful. I think of the regulars, of the way people drift in and out, tired, lonely, eager to be seen. I think of how easy it would be for someone to laugh off a rule, to sit where they shouldn't, to speak when silence is the only protection. The chair scrapes again. Closer. My mouth is dry. How long? Mr. Hawthorne meets my eyes. Until the pub forgets them. That could take generations. He finishes. The weight of it settles over me, not crushing, but absolute. From the corner comes a sound like breath passing over lips that don't quite exist. Hopeful. I stand slowly. The pressure eases further. Approval. Mr. Hawthorne reaches out, gripping my wrist. Think carefully. I am, I say, and I realize, with a cold clarity that surprises me, that I already know the truth. Some rules aren't meant to protect you. They're meant to protect everyone else. I step toward the corner. The air warms. Behind me, Mr. Hawthorne whispers something that sounds very much like a prayer, and the 13th table begins slowly, reverently, to remember its shape. The table doesn't appear all at once. It begins as absence, a subtle wrongness in the corner of the room, a place the light refuses to settle. I feel it before I see it, the way you sense a step where the floor should be solid and isn't. The pub breathes around me, wood contracting, beams murmuring softly, as if the building itself is adjusting its posture. I stop 3 steps from the corner. The air there is cooler, damp with the cellar's memory. The smell shifts ale and smoke, giving way to something earthier, older, stone, mold, long closed spaces. You don't sit, Mr. Hawthorne says behind me, his voice strained. You don't speak to them. You don't answer questions. I know, I say. I don't, really. But the rule settles into me anyway. Instinctive and heavy, like learning how to hold your breath underwater. The edge of the table surfaces next, not rising, not forming, but remembering itself. Wood darkens where it should be. Grain tightens. A circular outline presses into the floorboards as if the pub has always been shaped around it. 2 chairs follow. They face inward, waiting. My skin prickles. The pressure at my back shifts, guiding but not pushing, encouraging me to stand just outside the table's reach, close enough to be counted, far enough to refuse completion. This is your place, Mr. Hawthorne says softly. Not theirs. The faceless family does not appear. Not yet. Instead, I hear them. A murmur, like conversation heard through thick walls. Words don't quite form. Emotions do hunger, patience, a careful politeness sharpened by centuries of disappointment. I understand then what the rule truly is. It isn't don't serve the table. It's don't finish the ritual. I stand there for what feels like hours. Time behaves strangely in the corner. The fire burns low and bright all at once. The clock over the bar ticks unevenly, skipping beats. Mister, Hawthorne sits on a stool, hands folded, watching me with a mixture of relief and grief. Eventually, the pressure eases, the table dulls, the chairs lose definition, edges softening as if rubbed away by invisible hands. The corner grows lighter. They're satisfied, Mr. Hawthorne says quietly. For tonight, my legs tremble as I step back. The table fades completely, leaving behind only dust and a faint circular mark on the floor, like a ring left by a glass that once held something strong. I sag against the bar. What happens now? I ask. Now you learn, he replies. You learn the signs, the way the room leans, the way the air changes. You learn to step in before anyone else does. And if I don't, his expression hardens. Then someone sits. The next weeks blur together. I learn quickly, too quickly. I learn how to spot the tired ones, the people who linger near the corner, drawn by something they can't name. I learn how to redirect them with a smile, a joke, a free drink placed in their hands before curiosity has time to root. I learn how the table tries to make itself known, a chair nudged an inch out of place, a draft that carries cellar cold air across the room, a sudden, inexplicable quiet. And I learn the cost. Every night I stand there, I feel them more clearly. Their shapes press closer to understanding. Their voices grow distinct. Sometimes the boy cries. Sometimes the woman hums a lullaby with no melody. Sometimes the man clears his throat, as if preparing to speak, and restrains himself at the last possible moment. They are learning restraint because I am teaching it. But restraint is not peace. It's endurance. One night, long past closing, Mr. Hawthorne joins me in the corner. He won't be able to do this forever, he says gently. I don't answer. You know that, don't you? I do. The pub doesn't want a guardian. It wants continuity. A line unbroken. Someone will replace you, he says. Eventually. Not yet, I reply. He nods, respect flickering in his tired eyes. No, not yet. That night, as I lock up, I notice something new, etched faintly into the beam above the corner. Not a number, a name. Mine. The letters are shallow, as though carved with hesitation rather than force. I trace them with my finger, feeling the pub's quiet approval settle over me like a heavy coat. I understand then why the rule survives. Not because it's written down, but because someone always decides just for a while longer to keep standing in the wrong place, so no one else ever sits in the right one. And somewhere beneath the floor, patience sharpens its teeth and waits. The rule doesn't shatter all at once. It thins. That's the first sign, not danger, not noise, but erosion. A quiet, wearing down that feels almost merciful at first. I notice it in the mornings, when I unlock the pub and the corner feels lighter, less resistant, as if the space has begun to forget why it was ever guarded. The name above the beam fades, not scraped away, not removed, just softened, like chalk left too long in damp air. I don't tell Mr. Hawthorne. I don't tell anyone, because something else has begun to happen. The family comes closer, not visibly, not in chairs scraping or voices speaking, but in definition. Their murmurs gain edges. The boy's crying forms syllables. The woman's humming finds a tune, slow and aching, the kind you recognize without knowing why. And the man begins to speak my name. Only once, at first, only in dreams. I stop standing guard every night, not because I choose to, but because the pub stops asking. The pressure that once guided me into place weakens. Some evenings, the corner stays quiet all on its own. The table doesn't even try to remember itself. The air remains warm, normal. Relief settles in like a dangerous gift. You've done enough, Mr. Hawthorne says one night, his voice gentle with something like pride. They're fading. I want to believe him. I really do. The next evening, I'm not scheduled. I don't argue. At home, sleep comes easily for the first time in months. No murmurs. No cold breath at my back. No sense of being counted. When I wake, my hands are clean. I don't return to the pub for 3 days. On the 4th, I pass by on my way to the shop. The windows glow brighter than usual. Laughter spills out onto the street. A 13 has been chalked onto the specials board inside, half erased, probably as a joke. I stop walking. Inside, someone cheers. A chair scrapes. I don't go in. I don't need to. I already know. The next morning, the pub is closed. No sign. No notice. Just dark windows and a door that won't open. People speculate. Gas leak. Structural issue. Bad wiring. The usual explanations for when a place refuses to be a place anymore. They never find the cellar. They never talk about the floor giving way beneath table 13, how it collapsed inward, clean and sudden, swallowing wood and chair and space alike. They don't mention the sound witnesses swear they heard just before it happened. Applause, measured, satisfied. Years later, the building is something else. A shop, then offices, then empty again. But sometimes, late at night, when a new business tries to settle there, something goes wrong. Tables won't stay aligned. Certain corners feel wrong. People avoid one spot without knowing why, and every so often, someone stands there a little too long, feeling watched, feeling recognized, feeling the subtle, terrible urge to sit, because the rule wasn't there to keep the family trapped. It was there to keep them unfinished. And when the last person who remembered why the rule existed finally stepped away, the 13th table stopped waiting. It was served. Story 5. The rule is written nowhere. Not in the employee handbook, not taped to the break room fridge, not passed down during training in any formal way. It lives instead in the pauses between sentences, in the looks exchanged when someone new asks the wrong question, in the way the night crew moves just a little faster when the clock creeps toward closing. I learned it on my 3rd weekend shift. The restaurant is one you'd recognize instantly. Bright colors, clean lines, music calibrated to keep you alert but not awake. It smells like salt and sugar and hot oil, a scent so consistent it feels engineered rather than cooked. During the day, it's harmless, almost cheerful. Families, students, people grabbing something quick before moving on. At night, it's different. After midnight, the place empties in stages. The music softens. The overhead lights dim to a warm, flattering glow that hides stains and softens edges. The kitchen breathes fryers cooling, vents sighing, machines ticking as they settle into rest. I work closing shifts because no one else wants them. The pay is better. The hours are worse. On weekends, I'm the last one out. The first time, it's almost peaceful. I wipe down counters, mop the floor in slow, even strokes, let my thoughts wander. The store hums quietly around me, a white noise cocoon that makes time feel padded. When I finish, I check the doors. Locked. I check the lights. Off. I grab my bag and head toward the exit. That's when my phone buzzes. A message from the group chat. Did you do the thing? I stare at the screen. What thing? I type. 3 dots appear. Disappear. Appear again. Table cat. I glance back into the dining area. The tables are bare. Clean. Identical. Arranged in neat rows. Table numbers are small. Unobtrusive white plastic squares screwed into the edge of each surface. I find table 4 near the middle. Nothing special about it. 2 seats on either side. Wiped clean like the rest. Do what with it? I type. The response comes immediately. You're new. Leave some fries and a drink. Then, lock up. I hesitate. This feels like a prank. The kind pulled on new hires to see who will play along. I type a laughing emoji, but no one responds. The restaurant feels quieter now. I walk back into the kitchen, scoop a small portion of fries into a red carton, and pour a soda into a plastic cup. The ice crackles loudly in the silence. I set the tray down on table 4. The food looks out of place, too deliberate, like an offering. I turn to leave. Behind me, something shifts. Not a sound exactly, more like a change in pressure, the way air feels different when someone steps into a room. I don't turn around. I tell myself not to be stupid. I lock the door. Outside, the night air hits me like a shock. Cool, clean, ordinary. I laugh at myself, shake my head, and head home. I sleep badly, not because of nightmares, but because of hunger. A deep, gnawing sensation that wakes me just before dawn. My mouth dry, my stomach aching. I drink water, I eat cereal, Nothing helps. At work the next evening, no one mentions the fries. No one teases me. No one laughs. Instead, they avoid eye contact. You did it, right? One of them asks quietly as I pass. Yeah, I say. Why? He exhales, relief plain on his face. Good. That's when I notice something odd. Table 4 is clean, not just wiped, scrubbed. The surface gleams, polished to a shine that the others lack. The floor beneath it looks darker, as though it's been mopped more thoroughly. And I swear though, I can't explain how that the table looks satisfied. The next weekend, I close again. I don't wait for the message. I leave fries and a drink on table 4. This time, when I turn away, I hear it chewing, slow, methodical, close enough that I feel it in my chest. I don't look back. I never do, because everyone knows the real rule. If you're the last one out, you don't forget to feed what's waiting. The second time I forget on purpose. That detail matters to me now, the on purpose part, because it's the last clean line I can draw between accident and choice. It's a Sunday night. Slow. Dead enough that the silence starts to feel personal. The fryers cool faster than usual. The music shuts itself off at exactly 12:03, leaving behind the soft electrical hiss of the lights. I'm tired in the specific way that makes shortcuts feel earned. I stare at table 4 while I mop. It looks ordinary tonight. No extra shine. No sense of presence. Just plastic laminate and metal legs like all the others. It's just a ritual, I tell myself. Rituals only work if you believe in them. When I finish, I grab my bag and walk straight to the door. No fries. No drink. The lock clicks louder than it should. Outside, the parking lot is empty. Sodium lights buzzing overhead. I breathe in deeply, waiting for something to happen. Nothing does. I drive home with the radio on, windows cracked, convincing myself that the hunger from before was stress, conditioning, the kind of thing people talk themselves into when they're told a story often enough. That night, I dream of chewing, not eating, chewing. My jaw aches when I wake up. At work the next evening, the manager calls me into the back. She doesn't sit. Neither do I. You forgot, she says. I didn't. A lie. She studies my face for a long moment, then sighs. Did it open? My stomach tightens. Did what open? She closes her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. The door. After you locked it, I swallow. Yeah, I didn't check again, but that's enough, she says quietly. She walks past me toward the dining area. I follow, heart pounding. Table 4 is still there, but the chairs are wrong. They're pulled out, not much, just a few inches angled toward each other, like someone stood up in a hurry. The surface of the table is scratched, shallow lines gouged into it in overlapping arcs. Those weren't there yesterday, I whisper. No, she agrees. They weren't. She crouches and runs her fingers along the underside of the table. When she stands, her hand is shaking. There are marks underneath, she says. Like nails, only I feel suddenly cold. Who, not who, she corrects. When? She straightens and looks at me hard. Did you hear anything? I think of the dream, of the ache in my jaw, of the way my tongue felt thick and dry all day. No, I say. She nods once. Good. Then, maybe it didn't get much. What is it? I ask. She hesitates, then gestures for me to follow her into the office. The door closes softly behind us. Every location has one, she says. Not the table. The gap. I frown. What gap? The time between closing and empty, she replies. Between the last customer leaving and the building being alone. She folds her arms. Most places just sit with it. This one doesn't. I wait. Something showed up during renovations, she continues. Years ago. Cameras went dark. Alarms didn't trigger. Contractors quit without explanations that made sense. She looks at the floor. Corporate buried it. Changed layouts. Moved things around. But the space stayed hungry. Right. Hence the fries, I say. She gives a humorless smile. Cheap. Reliable, salty, greasy, familiar. And the drink? Something to wash it down, she says. The office hum feels louder now. Too loud. What happens if you keep forgetting? I ask. She meets my eyes. It stops waiting. That night, I do the ritual again. Praise, drink, table cap. I don't rush. I set the tray down carefully, straightening it, aligning the cup just so. My hands tremble, but the hunger in my stomach eases as soon as I step back. This time, I hear the chair move. Just a scrape. I don't look. I lock up and leave. At home, I eat a full meal and still feel unsatisfied. On Tuesday, another closer forgets. On Wednesday, he doesn't come in. They say he quit. They say he left town. They say a lot of things. But when I clean under table 4 the next night, I find something wedged between the leg and the floor. A plastic name tag. Scratched. Bent. Chewed. And for the first time, I understand the truth behind the ritual. It isn't about keeping the thing fed. It's about making sure it never gets curious enough to look around for something better. It starts with the smell following me home. Not strong at first. Just a suggestion clinging to my jacket when I hang it by the door. A faint blend of salt and oil and something stale that doesn't belong in my apartment. And I tell myself it's normal, because of where I work. Because grease gets into everything. Into fabric and hair and skin. But the next morning it's still there. Faintly blooming. When I move, and I realize with a slow, sinking dread that it isn't on my clothes at all, but on me. Under my skin. In the same way the hunger has been lately. Quiet during the day and sharp at night. Flaring whenever the sun goes down. And that's when the sounds begin. Not voices, not chewing exactly, but the soft plastic crinkle of a fast food bag settling. The almost inaudible scrape of cardboard on laminate. Noises that don't come from any one direction but seem to happen in the space behind my thoughts. And the worst part is how familiar they feel. How comforting. It's like white noise you've slept to for so long that silence feels wrong without it. So when I wake at 3 in the morning with my jaw clenched so tight it aches and my mouth tasting faintly of soda syrup, I don't panic. I just lie there listening, counting breaths until the sound fades. And the next day at work, I notice the ritual has changed without anyone announcing it. The fries needing to be fresher, hotter, the drink filled closer to the brim, the tray aligned perfectly with the table edge, and I realize this isn't escalation, it's preference. The same way a regular customer stops ordering off the menu and starts asking for the usual. And when I close that night, I feel watched, not from table 4, but from the reflection in the darkened windows, my own shape doubled and distorted, and I have the disturbing thought that if I turned around, I might see myself still standing there, older, hollow-cheeked, waiting patiently for the offering I've already forgotten to make. And I understand then what my manager meant about gaps. Because the gap isn't just the store between closing and empty. It's me, the space where hunger should end and rest should begin, and something has learned that I'm reliable, that I come back, that I set the tray down carefully and never look up. And as I lock the door and walk to my car with my stomach finally calm for the first time all day, I know with a clarity that makes my hands shake that the ritual is no longer tied to table 4 alone. That if I stopped feeding it there, it wouldn't starve. It would simply follow the shortest route home. Because once something learns, you'll bring it dinner, but it doesn't forget the way. By the time I realize I am no longer deciding whether to perform the ritual, but merely where the boundary between work and home has already dissolved into something porous and unreliable, because the store is no longer the origin point of the hunger, but only one of its feeding stations, and I begin to understand this on a Tuesday night, when the manager calls to say the location will be closing early for maintenance, which should have felt like relief, a night off, an interruption of the pattern, but instead sends a jolt of panic through me so sharp it makes my hands shake. My first irrational thought not about lost hours or pay, but about what will happen at 12:03 when the lights dim and there is no table 4 to receive the offering. And I find myself asking her, too quickly, too casually, so what about the usual thing? And the silence on the other end of the line stretches just long enough for me to realize I've said something I shouldn't have, because when she answers, her voice is different, careful, and stripped of pretense, and she tells me if the store is closed, it doesn't apply. Which should be reassuring, but instead feels like being told gravity has taken the night off. And after we hang up, I sit alone in my apartment, listening to the refrigerator hum and the distant traffic, and feeling the hunger begin to rise anyway, slow and deliberate, like something stretching awake. And I try to distract myself with television, with my phone, with food from my own kitchen. But everything tastes flat and unsatisfying. Texture's wrong, salt too sharp or not sharp enough. And sometime after midnight, I notice the smell again, stronger now, unmistakable, hot oil and soda syrup and cardboard, and I realize with a sick lurch that it's coming from the small kitchen table by the window, the one I eat at every night, because when I stand and approach it, I see that I've already set something down without remembering doing it. A paper napkin folded neatly, a fast food carton that I don't recall buying, still warm to the touch. Fries inside, arranged not carelessly, but intentionally, like they've been counted, and beside it a plastic cup filled almost to the brim with dark liquid and ice that hasn't melted yet. And my heart begins to hammer, not because I don't understand what's happening, but because I do, because the ritual has found a closer, more convenient surface, and in that moment I hear the sound I've been dreading since the first night I skipped on purpose. The soft scrape of a chair being pulled back, not violently, not hurriedly, but with the unhurried confidence of something that knows it has time, and I don't turn around because I know better now. Because I've learned the hard way that acknowledgement is nourishment, and instead I stand very still and stare at the wall while the hunger in my stomach eases into something dangerously close to comfort. And when the chewing begins slow, wet, methodical, I find myself breathing in time with it, my jaw loosening, the ache fading, and the most horrifying part is not the sound itself, but the way my body reacts to it. How my shoulders drop, how the tension drains from my neck, how relief washes through me like a sedative. And afterward, when the apartment falls silent again and the smell dissipates, I clean the table with shaking hands and scrub until my skin burns. But the faint scratch marks remain on the underside, shallow grooves like someone testing the surface from below. And over the following days, the pattern accelerates. The store reopening, but no longer being enough on its own. And the offerings there growing more elaborate, more precise, while the ones at home become expected, anticipated, my fridge beginning to empty faster than it should. My grocery bills rising as I buy things I don't remember craving but feel compelled to have on hand. Fries that must be fresh, drinks that must be cold, salt packets I start collecting, just in case. And I tell myself I'm managing it, that as long as I keep the thing fed, it won't escalate. But escalation isn't always about size or violence. Sometimes it's about intimacy, and that's when it starts moving closer, not in space, but in implication. The chair scraping nearer each night, the presence lingering longer after the food is gone, until one evening I feel a pressure at my back while I'm brushing my teeth. Not a touch, but the suggestion of one, like someone standing too close behind you in a line, and I spit toothpaste into the sink and grip the porcelain hard enough to hurt, staring at my reflection and seeing my eyes a little too dark, my cheeks a little too hollow, as if the hunger is no longer something I feel, but something I'm becoming. And when I go to work the next day, the manager avoids me entirely, won't meet my eyes, and I overhear two coworkers whispering about another closer who quit suddenly, left his keys in his locker. I stopped answering messages, and I know, without being told, that the ritual didn't fail him. It replaced him. Because that's the other truth no one says out loud, that these things don't just eat food, they eat patterns, routines, people-shaped gaps. And late one night when I'm standing in my kitchen waiting for the chewing to stop, I realize with a cold clarity that there is nothing tying it to fries or soda at all except habit, that those were training wheels, an easy introduction, and that if I ever stopped bringing food, really stopped, it wouldn't starve. It would adapt. It would find something else to consume. And the thought that follows is so quiet and reasonable it terrifies me more than anything else so far. The thought that maybe it already has. Because, as the chair finally scrapes back and the presence recedes, leaving me alone in the dim kitchen, my hunger gone and replaced by a deep, narcotic calm, I understand that what it's been taking all along is not the food, not even the ritual, but the moment afterward, the relief, The way I stand there and let myself be emptied just enough to make room for it again. I don't remember the moment I decide to stop feeding it, because there isn't one clean moment to remember, only a gradual hardening of resolve that comes from realizing there is nothing left to give without giving myself entirely, and this understanding arrives, not with courage, but with exhaustion. The bone-deep weariness of someone who's been waking up hungry and going to sleep, hollowed out for too long. And one night, after the store closes and the apartment has already been fed, and the quiet settles in with that dangerous softness I now recognize as contentment's shadow, I sit at my kitchen table and stare at the empty surface where the offering should be and feel nothing rise to meet it. No scrape of a chair, no pressure at my back. Just the refrigerator's honest hum and the city breathing outside my window. And the absence is so complete it feels staged, like the pause before a punchline. And I realize then that whatever I've been serving has learned restraint as well as appetite. That it can wait, because waiting costs it nothing, while waiting costs me everything. So I stand up and do the unthinkable thing, the thing every rule has been bending me away from since the first night, and I walk out of my apartment without locking the door behind me, without setting anything down, without checking the time, carrying nothing but my phone, and the certainty that if I don't break this pattern now, there won't be anything left to break later. And I keep walking until the sodium lights thin out and the streets become quieter, until the hunger starts to climb my throat again, not as a sensation, but as a suggestion, a familiar whisper that tells me I can still go back, still make it right, still feel that narcotic calm settle over my shoulders like a blanket, and I don't answer it. I let it talk itself hoarse while I put distance between me and every surface that has learned my habits. And when dawn finally bleeds into the sky and I find myself standing outside the closed restaurant, the windows dark and reflective, I understand why my feet brought me here without asking. Because if the ritual began in the gap between closing and empty, then it should end there too. And I use my key card to let myself in, knowing full well that the cameras will be down, that alarms won't notice, that the building has always made allowances for this kind of thing, and inside the air is stale and expectant, not angry, not hungry, just attentive, as if the place itself has been waiting for me to arrive without my tray, and I walk straight to table 4 and sit down for the first time since this started, feeling the chair accept my weight with a familiarity that makes my stomach lurch, and I don't put anything on the table. I don't align anything or straighten anything. I just sit there and wait. And when the presence arrives, it doesn't announce itself with chewing or scraping, but with a change in my own breathing, a subtle synchronization. My lungs falling into a rhythm that isn't mine, and I feel the chair across from me move. Not pulled out, just acknowledged. And I finally turn my head enough to see my own reflection in the dark window behind the counter. Doubled and blurred, one version of me seated and hollow-eyed, another standing somewhere behind my shoulder, older, thinner, patient, and the understanding clicks into place with an awful gentleness that this was never about feeding a thing under a table or in a gap, but about training someone to be a place where feeding happens, a reliable surface, a predictable endpoint. And I say out loud, because saying things matters even when you're told it doesn't, no more. And the word doesn't echo, it's absorbed, and the hunger surges in response, not as pain but as persuasion, showing me everything it has ever given me in return. Quiet sleep, the easing of that tight coil in my chest offering it back like proof of good faith, and I understand that this is the last order, not a request for fries or soda, but a request for continuity, for me to remain seated so the gap stays filled, and I stand up instead, slowly, deliberately, pushing the chair back with a sound that feels like tearing fabric, and the building reacts then, not violently but decisively, lights flickering, vents sighing, a low vibration passing through the floor as if something deep beneath the tile has shifted position, and I walk toward the door while the hunger follows me like a shadow, whispering all the reasonable things it has learned to say, that I'm tired, that I can rest after, that one last time won't matter. And when I reach the threshold, I stop and turn back, not to look at what's waiting, but to look at the table itself, at how ordinary it is, how easy it would be to mistake it for any other. And I realize the final truth with a clarity that hurts, that what makes these things dangerous isn't their appetite, but our willingness to become furniture for it, to let ourselves be used because being useful feels better than being empty. And I leave then, not triumphantly, not bravely, just finally, and outside the morning is pale and indifferent, and nothing dramatic happens. No scream, no crash, no applause, just a sense of something recalibrating behind me, as if a mechanism has lost a familiar stop and is adjusting its range. And I don't go home. I don't go back to the store. I keep moving until my phone buzzes with messages I don't read, and the hunger dwindles into a dull ache and then into nothing at all. And weeks later, when I hear the location closed permanently for reasons no one can quite pin down, when rumors circulate about a table that wouldn't stay put and a smell that lingered after closing, when someone mentions a closer who swore the place felt wrong if you stood still too long, I don't correct them. I don't explain, because explanations are invitations. And some rituals only survive because people keep telling the story the same way. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let a place go hungry long enough that it forgets your taste. And now, the kitchen lights are finally off. The fryers have gone cold. The chairs are stacked. The last door has been locked. If you're still listening, it means you made it through the night through empty diners, silent cafés, forgotten basements, shadowed corners, and tables that were never meant to be used. But before you sleep, take a moment. Listen to the quiet around you, because some places don't disappear when you leave them. They only learn how to wait somewhere else. If you're alone tonight, keep a light on. If you're working late, don't skip the small rituals. And if you ever feel the urge to sit somewhere you shouldn't, trust that feeling and walk away. This has been Dread Shadow. Thank you for listening. Good night. And don't forget to lock the door behind you.